"The signature is wrong." That was the first thing the realtor said. Not the price. Not the photographs of my house. Not the fact that my nephew had walked into her brokerage office with a forged power of attorney and tried to list my Forest Hill mansion for $160 million. She looked at the signature on the last page, then at the signature on the land transfer documents he had brought, and pushed both papers slowly across the glass conference table. "My aunt signs differently when she uses her full legal name," my nephew said. He smiled as if he had rehearsed the answer. The realtor did not smile back. Her name was Claire Bennett. She had sold luxury properties across Toronto for nearly 20 years. She knew how wealthy families behaved when they wanted privacy, speed, or discretion. She also knew what panic looked like when someone had been caught too early. My nephew Ethan Vale had not yet realized which one she was seeing. "The registered owner is Evelyn Margaret Vale," Claire said. "This document says Evelyn Marie Vale." Ethan glanced down. For less than a second, his confidence cracked. Then he leaned back in his chair and laughed. "A clerical mistake. My aunt is 81. Her health has declined. She confuses names sometimes. I was 73. I still managed 3 investment companies, chaired a private conservation trust, and read every legal document placed in front of me twice." Ethan knew that. Claire knew it too. She had met me 7 years earlier at a fundraising dinner for the Toronto Botanical Garden. We had spoken for perhaps 15 minutes, but people in her profession remembered owners of rare properties. Especially owners of houses that were never supposed to be sold. My mansion stood behind limestone walls on 2 acres in Forest Hill, surrounded by mature maple and oak trees older than most of the homes on the street. The house itself had been built in 1928 and restored over 13 years by my late husband Robert and me. It had 26 rooms, a hand-carved walnut staircase, a library imported from an estate in Scotland, and a glass conservatory overlooking a sunken garden. The number in Ethan's listing proposal, $160 million, was outrageous even by Toronto standards. But the house was not merely a house. The property included development rights tied to 3 adjoining parcels held through a family land corporation. If assembled and rezoned, the land could support a private residential enclave worth far more than the mansion itself. Only 4 people knew that. I was one of them. Ethan was another. Claire closed the folder. "I'll need to speak directly with Mrs. Vale. My aunt cannot take calls. Then I'll visit her. She's in a private care facility." "Which one?" Ethan's smile disappeared. "You don't need to interrogate me. I'm not interrogating you, I'm verifying authority. I brought notarized documents. You brought copies. The originals are in my lawyer's office." "Which lawyer?" He stood. The movement was too sudden. His chair rolled backward and struck the credenza behind him. Claire stayed seated. Ethan gathered the papers and shoved them into a leather portfolio. "This is why families avoid large firms," he said. "You people make every transaction impossible. Legitimate transactions usually survive basic questions." He stared at her. Claire later told me that was the moment she became certain. Not because he was angry. Because he stopped pretending to be worried about me. A real nephew managing an elderly aunt's affairs would have defended the arrangement, explained the medical situation, offered contact information for doctors, lawyers, accountants, or trustees. Ethan did none of that. He looked at Claire as though she were an obstacle between him and money he already considered his. "You'll regret wasting this opportunity," he said. Then he left. He took the forged documents with him, but Claire had scanned them before the meeting began. At 10:17 that morning, she called my office. My assistant, Nora, answered. "Mrs. Vale is in a meeting," Nora said. Claire paused. "A meeting?" "Yes, she'll be available in about 40 minutes. "Is she physically in your office?" "She's sitting 15 feet from me." Claire asked to hold. Nora placed the call through immediately. "I was reviewing a financing proposal for a renewable energy project near Sudbury when my private line lit up. Evelyn Vale." "Mrs. Vale, this is Claire Bennett from Bennett Hartwell Realty." I remembered her voice before I remembered her name. "Claire, the botanical fundraiser." "Yes, I'm sorry to call without warning." "What happened?" There was a brief silence. "Your nephew tried to hire me to sell your home." I looked through the glass wall of my office at Nora. She had already stopped typing. "Which nephew?" "Ethan Vale." "Of course. What authority did he claim?" Continuing power of attorney for property. He also presented what appears to be a direction authorizing immediate sale. Appears. I believe the documents are fraudulent. I closed the financing file. Tell me exactly what he gave you. She described the power of attorney, the identification copies, a letter claiming I had advanced vascular dementia, and a supposed medical opinion stating I lacked capacity to manage property. That last detail made my hand tighten around the phone. What doctor signed the letter? Dr. Leonard Shaw. I knew the name. Not because he was my doctor. Because he had been Ethan's roommate at Queen's University. Send everything to the secure address my assistant will give you, I said. Do not contact Ethan again. Do not alert his lawyer if he has one. Do not discuss this with anyone in your office except your managing broker and counsel. Claire lowered her voice. Should I call the police? Not yet. She hesitated. Mrs. Vale, he tried to sell a $160 million property he does not own. Yes. That is not a family misunderstanding. No, I said, it is not. I ended the call and looked at Nora. She had worked for me for 12 years. Her loyalty was not sentimental. It was built on competence, trust, and the fact that neither of us tolerated unnecessary drama. This was necessary drama. Cancel the afternoon, I said. Done. Call Daniel Mercer. Tell him I need him here in 1 hour. Daniel was my estate's lawyer. Should I ask why? Tell him Ethan forged a power of attorney and attempted to sell the Forest Hill property. Nora's eyebrows rose, but only slightly. And security. Quietly increase it, no visible guards at the house, change all electronic access codes, disable every family guest credential. Including your sisters. I thought of my younger sister, Patricia, Ethan's mother. Yes. Nora nodded. What about Ethan? Especially Ethan. I stood and crossed to the window. From the 32nd floor, Toronto looked calm. Glass towers reflected a pale autumn sky. Traffic moved along University Avenue. Somewhere below, people were buying coffee, arguing over parking spaces, and rushing to appointments. And somewhere in the city, my nephew believed his only problem was a cautious realtor. He had no idea Claire had called me. That advantage mattered. Anger is useful when you control it. Mine had become cold before I hung up the phone. Ethan had always mistaken restraint for softness. When he was 10, he stole $300 from Patricia's purse and blamed the housekeeper. I found the money hidden inside a model airplane in his bedroom. Patricia said he had been confused. At 16, he took Robert's vintage Jaguar without permission and crashed it into a stone gate near Rosedale. Patricia called it youthful recklessness. At 24, he persuaded an elderly family friend to invest in a nightclub that never opened. When she lost nearly $200,000, Patricia said Ethan had trusted the wrong business partner. At 38, he was still surrounded by people who had supposedly betrayed, misled, or misunderstood him. Ethan was never responsible. Until now. At 11:42, Claire's files arrived through our encrypted system. Nora printed nothing. She displayed the documents on the large screen in my conference room. The first page showed a continuing power of attorney dated 6 weeks earlier. My name appeared at the top. The document granted Ethan broad authority over all my property, including bank accounts, securities, corporations, real estate, trusts, and personal possessions. It authorized him to sell assets without consulting other family members. It waived the requirement to account to anyone except a court. It also contained a clause allowing him to compensate himself at a rate of 3% of all assets managed or transferred. On paper, Ethan had given himself control over almost everything I owned. The witnesses were listed as Dr. Leonard Shaw and a woman named Melanie Price. I knew Melanie too. She was Ethan's girlfriend. The signature at the bottom resembled mine from a distance. Up close, it was a poor imitation. The pressure was uneven, the capital E leaned too far forward, the final stroke and veil curved upward instead of down. Robert used to say my signature looked like a gate closing. This one looked like someone trying to escape. The next document was worse. It was a letter on the letterhead of a private neurological clinic in Yorkville. According to the letter, I had been assessed after multiple episodes of confusion, financial impulsivity, and wandering. It claimed I did not understand the nature or consequences of property decisions. The letter recommended that Ethan assume immediate control. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Nora looked at me carefully. What? Financial impulsivity. You find that funny? Last month I refused to approve new office chairs because the supplier increased the price by 9%. Nora almost smiled. Then she opened the final attachment. It was a draft listing agreement for my home. The proposed list price was $160,000. The commission, if sold, would exceed $3 million. The agreement instructed the brokerage to market the property privately to international buyers and required all offers to be submitted only to Ethan. Not to me. Not to my lawyer. Not to the land corporation. To Ethan. Attached was a direction stating that the sale proceeds were to be deposited into a newly opened account at Northern Dominion Private Bank. The account name was EM Vale Holdings. That was clever. My initials. My surname. A corporate name close enough to appear legitimate. But I had never created such a company. Nora enlarged the banking instructions. Do you recognize the branch contact? I leaned closer. The account manager was listed as Graham Vale. My older brother's son. Ethan's cousin. For years, Graham had worked in private banking. He was careful, polished, and almost aggressively respectable. He had also spent the previous decade criticizing Ethan. Or pretending to. I want a full relationship map, I said. Ethan, Graham, Leonard Shaw, Melanie Price, every corporation connected to them, every property, every recent mortgage registration, every lawsuit. You think Graham is involved? I think his name is on the document. That could be fabricated too. It could. Nora understood what I did not say. We would not assume innocence because betrayal was inconvenient. Daniel Mercer arrived at 12:35 carrying no briefcase. He came straight from court still wearing a dark suit and a pale gray tie. He had represented Robert and me for 27 years and had the unsettling habit of becoming quieter when matters became more serious. After reviewing the documents, he removed his glasses. This is criminal. Yes. Fraud, attempted transfer of property, potential conspiracy, use of false medical documentation, identity theft. Yes. We should contact Toronto Police immediately. Not yet. Daniel stared at me. Evelyn. If we move too soon, Ethan destroys evidence and says the documents were preliminary drafts prepared without his knowledge. He presented them to a realtor. A realtor who did not sign the listing agreement. He can claim he was testing options. He told her you lacked capacity. He can claim he relied on Dr. Shaw. Daniel tapped the medical letter. Then we go after Shaw and lose the chance to identify everyone else. He leaned back. You believe this is larger? I pointed to the bank account. Ethan does not know how to structure a private transaction of this size. He would not understand beneficial ownership, tax withholding, title insurance, or the corporate parcels tied to the house, someone advised him. Graham? Possibly. Daniel read the account information again. If Graham opened an account using misleading ownership records, his career is over. If he intended to receive $160 million based on forged authority, his career will be the least of his concerns. Daniel folded his hands. What do you want to do? Let Ethan continue. No. He believes Claire rejected him. He'll find another broker. And if that broker is less careful? We control the title. Do we? The question irritated me. Then I saw his expression. Daniel was not challenging me. He was warning me. What have you found? I asked. Nothing yet, but these documents are dated 6 weeks ago. If Ethan has already used them elsewhere, the house may not be the first target. The room went still. I had focused on Forest Hill because that was where Claire had encountered him. But the power of attorney covered everything. My companies. My investment accounts. My art collection. The Muskoka property. The conservation lands. The family trust. How quickly can we run searches? I asked. I'll contact title counsel. We can search every property registered directly or indirectly to you. Banking? More difficult without tipping people off. I'll call the institutions myself. No use general counsel. If Ethan has an insider, a direct call may trigger him. Nora's phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen. Security says Ethan is at the house. I turned toward her. Now. He arrived at the east gate 4 minutes ago. His old credential failed. He's speaking to the gate camera. Is Patricia with him? No, he's alone. I walked to the screen displaying the security feed. Ethan stood beside a black Range Rover, holding his phone in one hand. He wore the same navy suit Claire had described. His expression had hardened. The gate microphone transmitted his voice into the conference room. "This is ridiculous. Open the gate." The guard responded from the control room. "I'm sorry, Mr. Vale, your access authorization is inactive. My aunt asked me to come. I'll need confirmation from Mrs. Vale. She can't confirm, that's why I'm here." Daniel looked at me. "Do not speak to him." I pressed the intercom button. "Ethan." He froze. Then he looked up at the camera. "Aunt Evelyn. You said I couldn't take calls." His face changed. "Not much. But enough." "I don't know what you mean." "You told Claire Bennett I was in a private care facility." He stepped closer to the camera. "Claire misunderstood. Did she also misunderstand the forged power of attorney?" He said nothing. Behind him, a delivery truck slowed, then continued down the street. Ethan lowered his voice. "You shouldn't discuss private legal matters over an intercom. You created the legal matter. I was trying to protect you." "From what?" "From yourself." Daniel moved closer, silently urging me to stop. I ignored him. Ethan placed one hand on the iron gate. "You've become erratic," he said. "Everyone sees it." "Who is everyone?" "Family." "Name them." "My mother, Graham, people at the office." "Which office?" He hesitated. That was the second crack. "Your companies," he said. "I own 7, be specific." "You see, this is what I mean, you're hostile, suspicious. You attempted to list my home without my consent. I obtained professional advice." "From Leonard Shaw?" His jaw tightened. "You need an assessment." "I had one." That was a lie. But Ethan did not know it. He stared at the camera. "When?" "This morning." "With whom?" "Someone not facing fraud charges." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Ethan stepped away from the gate. "You think you're untouchable because people have always cleaned up after you." I almost admired the reversal. "People have cleaned up after you since childhood," I said. "My father died with nothing because Robert pushed him out of the family business. Your father died after selling his shares and spending the proceeds. That is your version. It is the audited version. You stole his future. And now you're stealing my house." His face flushed. "I am trying to recover what should have belonged to us." There it was. Not concern. Not incapacity. Entitlement. Ethan had not forged the papers merely because he needed money. He had built a moral argument in which theft became restitution. That made him more dangerous. Thieves sometimes stop when the risk rises. Believers do not. He pointed toward the house behind the trees. That property was bought with family money. It was bought by Robert and me, using profits from grandfather's company. Profits Robert earned after your father sold his interest. You rewrote everything." "No, Ethan, I kept records." He smiled then. A thin, unpleasant smile. "You're going to wish you had been more generous." He returned to the Range Rover. Before opening the door, he looked back at the camera. "You should check your accounts." Then he drove away. I released the intercom button. No one spoke for several seconds. Daniel reached for his phone. "We're calling the police." "First, the accounts." We divided the work. Daniel contacted title counsel and 2 forensic accountants. Nora notified the general counsel of my holding companies. I called the chair of the family trust's audit committee and ordered an emergency freeze on discretionary transfers. Within 40 minutes, we found the first breach. A line of credit secured against my Muskoka property had been increased from $2 million to $18 million. The request had been approved 3 weeks earlier. The supporting documents included the same forged power of attorney. $11 million had already been drawn. The funds were transferred through 2 numbered companies and then disappeared into a bank in the Cayman Islands. The second breach involved shares in a private logistics company. I owned 32%. 5 days earlier, instructions had been submitted to transfer those shares into EM Vale Holdings. The company's lawyer had paused the transaction because the corporate minute book contained transfer restrictions requiring board approval. The third breach was personal. Someone had attempted to remove 6 paintings from secure storage in Mississauga. The warehouse refused because the collection manager called me directly. I had dismissed the call as a routine verification request. Now I remembered the employee's uneasy tone. By 4 p.m., the list had grown to 9 attempted transactions. Ethan had not begun with the mansion. The mansion was the largest move, not the first. He had been testing the forged authority across institutions, learning where controls were weak and where questions were asked. Daniel stood over the conference table, surrounded by handwritten notes. "He's had 6 weeks," he said. "Why haven't we seen more completed transfers?" "Because he's incompetent," Nora said. "No," I replied, "because he's waiting." "For what?" I looked again at the listing agreement. A private sale. International buyer. Sale proceeds to a controlled account. The house was supposed to produce the large cash event. The earlier transactions were financing. Preparation. Operating money. "What costs $11 million before a property sale?" I asked. Daniel understood immediately. Deposits. On what? Other assets, company's real estate, something he intends to acquire once the sale closes. Nora opened the corporate search report that had just arrived. Ethan incorporated 4 companies in the last 2 months. She projected the names onto the screen. North Crown Developments Inc., Vale Urban Partners Limited, Maple Meridian Capital Corp., and Ashbourne Forest Estates Inc. That last name mattered. Ashbourne was the name of my house. Not the street address. Not a registered business. The private name Robert and I had given the estate. We had carved it into the stone arch above the garden entrance. "What does Ashbourne Forest Estates own?" I asked. Nora searched. "One parcel in Vaughan, purchased 18 days ago for $24 million. "With what financing?" $4 million cash deposit, $20 million vendor take-back mortgage. "Development land?" "Yes, 63 acres. Daniel came around the table. "Who sold it?" Nora opened another record. Her expression changed. Vale Conservation Trust. The room became silent. My trust. The trust I had established to preserve environmentally sensitive land across Ontario. The trust had sold 63 acres to Ethan's company. No sale had been approved. No board meeting had been held. No independent valuation had been commissioned. Yet the land registry showed a completed transfer. I read the registration twice. The signing officer for the trust was listed as Graham Vale. "He doesn't have signing authority," I said. Daniel was already scrolling. "He does, according to this resolution." A corporate resolution had been uploaded with the registration. It stated that I had resigned as chair due to incapacity and appointed Graham as interim trustee with full authority to dispose of land. My forged signature appeared beneath it. So did the signatures of 2 other trustees. One had died 8 months earlier. The other was spending the winter in New Zealand. Nora whispered, "This is not just Ethan." "No," I said, "it never was." Daniel called the police. This time I did not stop him. By evening, 2 detectives from the Financial Crimes Unit were sitting in my library at Ashbourne. Detective Alina Park led the interview. She was in her 40s, concise and unimpressed by wealth. Her partner, Detective Mark Dufresne, said little and took detailed notes. They had already spoken with Claire. They had also contacted the neurological clinic whose letterhead appeared on the false capacity assessment. The clinic existed. Dr. Leonard Shaw worked there. But the clinic denied issuing the letter. Its file system showed no record of me as a patient. "The doctor may claim his signature was forged," Detective Park said. "Was it?" "We haven't asked him yet." "Why not?" "Because your lawyer requested that we discuss investigative sequencing before approaching potential suspects." Daniel gave me a look that said patience was now mandatory. Detective Park placed a copy of the power of attorney on the table. "Mrs. Vale, is there any possibility you signed a document appointing Ethan and do not recall the circumstances?" "No." "Have you ever appointed anyone under a continuing power of attorney?" "Yes." "Who?" "My lawyer has the original." Daniel opened a leather document case he had brought from his firm. He removed a sealed envelope. "My office holds Mrs. Vale's continuing power of attorney for property executed in 2016. Detective Park put on gloves before opening it. The document appointed Daniel and Nora jointly. Not Ethan. It required both attorneys to act together. It expressly prohibited them from selling Ashbourne without written approval from the independent protector of the Vale Family Trust. "Who is the protector?" Detective Dufresne asked. "My late husband's former business partner," I said, "Thomas Calder." "Where is he?" "Vancouver." "Has he been contacted?" "Not yet." Detective Park compared the real document with the forged one. "They copied the general structure." "They had access to a draft," Daniel said, "or someone at my firm gave them information." His voice remained calm, but I knew him well enough to hear the anger. Detective Park looked toward the security monitor in the corner. "Who has had physical access to this house recently?" "Family, staff, contractors, guests." "Your nephew?" "Yes." "When was he last inside?" I thought about it. 3 months ago, my sister's birthday dinner. "Was he ever alone?" "Briefly." Nora checked the household log. 37 minutes. He said he had taken a business call in the library. The original power of attorney had never been kept in the library. But Robert's estate files had, including older drafts prepared before the final document. Ethan could have photographed them. Detective Park asked to see the room where he had taken the call. We led her to the small adjoining study. Nothing appeared disturbed. The desk drawers were locked, the wall safe showed no signs of tampering. Then Detective Dufresne noticed a faint rectangular mark in the dust behind a row of law books. He removed the books one by one. A black plastic device smaller than a deck of cards had been fixed beneath the shelf. Nora stared at it. "What is that?" Detective Park did not touch it. "Possibly a camera." The device faced the desk. More specifically, it faced the document stand where I reviewed confidential papers. My skin went cold. This was no longer a nephew taking advantage of family access. Someone had installed surveillance inside my home. Security isolated the room immediately. A technical unit arrived after midnight and found 2 more devices. One in the study. One in the upstairs sitting room where I often met privately with Daniel. Both had wireless transmission capability. Both appeared to have been installed during the previous 3 months. At 1:18 a.m., Detective Park returned to the library. "We need to consider that the suspects may know about accounts, documents, and decisions you have not disclosed publicly. They may also know we discovered the fraud," I said. "Claire's office could have been monitored. Your nephew may assume she called you. He came here because he knew his access had been disabled." "That is likely." Daniel stood near the fireplace. "Can you arrest him?" "Not yet." I looked at her sharply. "You have forged documents, fraudulent transactions, stolen trust property, and surveillance equipment in my home. We have evidence of crimes. We are still establishing who committed each one. If we arrest Ethan now, the others may disappear, destroy records, or move funds beyond recovery." It was the same argument I had made that morning. I disliked hearing it from someone else. Detective Park continued. "We also have a more immediate problem." She placed a land registry report in front of me. Ashbourne had not been transferred. "Not yet." But a notice had been registered against the property. A notice of agreement of purchase and sale. The registered purchaser was a Luxembourg company called Verdant Crown SA. The stated purchase price was $148 million. The notice had been registered 2 days earlier, before Ethan met Claire. "What does that mean?" Nora asked. "It means Ethan may not have been looking for a buyer," Daniel said. "He may already have one." I examined the purchaser's name. Verdant Crown. It meant nothing to me. The agreement attached to the notice was signed on my behalf by Ethan under the forged power of attorney. It required the transaction to close in 12 days. The buyer had paid a $20 million deposit to a trust account. "Whose trust account?" I asked. Detective Park turned the page. The receiving law firm was Hollis Grant LLP. I knew one of its senior partners. Graham's father-in-law. The fraud had reached deeper into the family than I wanted to admit. Detective Park pointed to a clause near the end of the agreement. "There's another issue. The sale did not include only the mansion. It included an option to purchase the 3 adjoining parcels controlled by the Family Land Corporation. The same parcels whose development potential was known to only 4 people. Me, Daniel, Graham, and Thomas Calder. Ethan had learned enough to advertise the mansion, but he could not have drafted this agreement. He did not know the parcels were held separately. He did not know the option language Robert had negotiated years earlier. He did not know that combining the land could multiply its value. Someone with intimate knowledge had built the transaction for him. I looked at Daniel. He had gone pale. "What?" I asked. He did not answer. "Daniel." He reached for the agreement and flipped to the schedule describing the adjoining parcels. Then he read the legal descriptions aloud. The first was correct. The second was correct. The third was not. The third description belonged to a parcel in Caledon. A parcel containing an abandoned quarry and 40 acres of protected wetland. A parcel I had never owned. "Why would they include the wrong property?" Nora asked. Daniel looked at me. "They didn't." He turned the page toward us. "The legal description was changed in your corporation's minute book 9 years ago. That is impossible. I prepared the amendment myself." "You never told me." "You signed it." "I did not." His eyes stayed on mine. For the first time in 27 years I could not read his expression. Detective Park watched both of us. Daniel took a slow breath. "Evelyn, there is something about the adjoining parcels that Robert asked me not to disclose unless someone attempted to force a sale of Ashbourne." My anger shifted. Not toward Ethan. Toward my dead husband. What did Robert do? Daniel closed the agreement. He created a trap. Outside the library windows, headlights appeared beyond the front gates. A black sedan stopped on the street. A man stepped out. Even through the rain and darkness, I recognized him. Thomas Calder. The protector of the trust. The only person whose approval was required before Ashbourne could legally be sold. He had flown across the country without calling me. And he was carrying a document case handcuffed to his wrist. Thomas Calder did not wait for the gates to open. He stood beneath the rain in a charcoal overcoat, one wrist attached to the black case, while the security team verified his identity through 3 separate channels. His passport matched. His voice matched. The private phrase Robert had given him 15 years earlier matched. Even then, I made him wait. Trust becomes expensive after someone installs cameras in your house. When the gates finally opened, Thomas walked up the long drive alone. Water ran from the brim of his hat. He did not look toward the mansion's upper windows or the security officers positioned behind the trees. He looked directly at me through the glass front doors. Thomas had aged since I last saw him in person. His shoulders were narrower, his silver hair had turned almost white, but his face retained the severe composure that had made lenders nervous and competitors reckless during the years he and Robert built their first development company. He entered the foyer and removed his hat. "Evelyn." "Thomas." Detective Park stepped forward. "I'm Detective Alina Park, Toronto Police Financial Crimes. I know who you are." She glanced at the case. "What are you carrying?" "The reason someone is trying to steal this house." He held up his handcuffed wrist. "And the reason they will fail." Daniel closed the library doors behind us. Thomas refused coffee, he refused a towel. He kept the case attached to his wrist until Detective Park inspected the locking mechanism and a technical officer scanned it for electronics. Only then did he enter a 6-digit code. The cuffs released with a metallic click. Inside the case were 4 sealed document folders, a compact encrypted drive, 2 notarized affidavits, and an old brass key. Thomas placed the first folder on the table. "Before I explain this, I need to know who has seen the purchase agreement." "Police, Daniel, Nora, me, and title counsel," I said. "Claire Bennett." "Not the agreement." "Ethan?" "He signed it." "He may not have read it." Daniel frowned. "He signed as attorney for property. His lawyers would have reviewed it." Thomas looked at him. "Which lawyers?" "Hollis Grant appears to represent the transaction." "No, Hollis Grant holds the deposit. That does not mean they represent Ethan." Detective Park opened her notebook. "Who does?" Thomas glanced at the surveillance camera now disabled in the corner. "We should assume this room was compromised." "It has been swept," Detective Park said. "Once. Twice." Thomas remained standing. "The people behind this paid for private medical documents, forged corporate resolutions, manipulated title records, and placed covert equipment in Evelyn's home. I prefer not to assume they made only one attempt." I was losing patience. "You arrived carrying answers, start giving them." He met my eyes. Robert believed someone within the family would eventually try to force the sale of Ashbourne. Who? He did not know. When did he tell you this? 11 years ago. Robert had been dead for 8. For 3 years before his death, he had known or believed that a relative might target our home. And he had told Thomas. Not me. Why would he hide that from his wife? Because he thought you would confront the family immediately. He was right. And confrontation would have warned the person. You let me host them here, you let me discuss business in front of them. I advised Robert to tell you. But you honored his decision. I honored the legal instruction he gave me. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have. Daniel touched the first sealed folder. What is the trap? Thomas sat. The Forest Hill parcels are not what they appear to be. He removed a plan of survey and spread it across the table. Ashbourne occupied the central property, 3 adjoining parcels wrapped around it to the north and east. On conventional maps, the 4 lots appeared capable of forming a development site of just over 5 acres. A developer could preserve the mansion as a central residence and build several luxury homes around it. Or demolish everything and pursue a denser plan. That was the value Ethan and his partners were trying to capture. Thomas pointed to the 3rd parcel. The corporation does not own this. Daniel leaned closer. The land registry says it does. The registry reflects a transfer registered 9 years ago. Which I prepared. You prepared a transfer based on instructions Robert gave you. Daniel stiffened. You approved the legal description. I approved the document Robert directed me to approve. Detective Dufresne spoke for the first time. So who owns the real parcel? Thomas removed the brass key from the case. This opens a deposit box in Montreal. That is not responsive, Detective Park said. It is where the original deed is held. Whose name is on it? Thomas looked at me. Evelyn's. I stared at him. My personal name? Not exactly. He opened the 2nd folder. Inside was a trust declaration dated 23 years earlier. Beneficiary was listed as Evelyn M. The trustee was a Quebec company called Marwood Fiduciaire Inc. I had never heard of it. The trust owned one asset, the actual 3rd adjoining parcel beside Ashbourne. Robert created a nominee trust, Daniel asked. Before the other parcels were assembled. Why? Because a competing developer was trying to acquire the block. Robert wanted to conceal the full assembly. That explains the original purchase, Daniel said, not the later substitution. Thomas tapped the Caledon description in the purchase agreement. 9 years ago, Robert learned that someone had requested copies of every land document connected to Ashbourne, not through ordinary title searches, through internal corporate files. Who requested them? I asked. The audit log was erased. Who had access? Several lawyers, accountants, corporate officers, family office staff. And family? Graham had temporary access during a trust restructuring. There it was again. Graham. Always close enough to be useful, never close enough to appear responsible. Thomas continued. Robert concluded that whoever was searching intended to identify the ownership structure. He amended the land corporation record so the 3rd parcel appeared to be a different property. Daniel shook his head. That creates an inaccurate minute book. It creates a controlled inaccuracy backed by the real deed, real trust declaration, and a corrective instrument held in escrow. You cannot maintain false corporate records as bait. You can correct an internal clerical error before any transaction relies on it. Except someone has relied on it. Thomas gave him a cold look. Someone committing fraud has relied on it. Detective Park lifted the purchase agreement. What happens when this sale closes? It cannot close legally. The seller does not own one of the properties included in the option. That could delay the transaction. It does not identify the criminals. The false parcel is not the trap. Thomas removed a 2nd plan. This one showed subsurface lines beneath the mansion and adjoining land. Old water channels. Drainage tunnels. An access corridor running east from Ashbourne's garden. The real parcel contains the only legal access to a buried municipal stormwater easement, he said. Without that access, redevelopment of the assembled site is effectively impossible. I studied the map. I had lived at Ashbourne for decades. I knew about the old drainage system beneath the rear gardens. I did not know the access point lay outside the registered estate boundaries. The purchaser believes they are acquiring development control, Thomas said. They are not. They are acquiring a mansion and an option over 2 useful parcels and 1 worthless quarry. Worthless, Nora asked. The Caledon property cannot be developed. Protected wetland covers most of it. The quarry has environmental remediation liabilities. Daniel looked up. How much? Potentially 70 million. For the first time since Thomas arrived, I understood Robert's trap. If someone attempted to steal Ashbourne using the corrupted internal records, they would not seize the hidden development value. They would inherit a contaminated liability. But it still did not satisfy me. Robert's plan depends on the fraudster completing the transaction, I said. Yes. And losing money afterward. Yes. That punishes them. It does not protect me from being dragged through litigation, title claims, and criminal proceedings. No, the next document protects you. Thomas opened the 3rd folder. It contained an agreement between Robert Thomas and Marwood Fiduciaire. The language was dense, but one clause had been underlined. Upon any attempted unauthorized transfer of Ashbourne or the adjoining corporate parcels, the trustee was required to register the corrective deed and exercise a pre-existing purchase option over the mansion itself. Marwood has an option to buy Ashbourne, Daniel asked. For $1. I stood so abruptly that my chair struck the floor. You allowed my husband to give a corporation the right to buy my home for $1. Only upon an attempted fraudulent transfer. That does not make it less insane. It prevents the fraud. Transfers my house to strangers. You are the sole beneficial owner of Marwood's trust. I did not know the trust existed. You did not need to know for the protection to operate. I always need to know who controls my property. Thomas did not retreat. You control it. I control nothing I do not know exists. Nora picked up the trust declaration. Can the trustee act without Mrs. Vale's approval? Only to block an unauthorized transfer. After that, legal title must be returned to her on demand. Who controls Marwood? A professional trust company in Montreal. Which one? Marwood is privately held. By whom? Thomas hesitated. The delay was small. But after the day I had endured, small delays had weight. By the Calder Foundation, he said. Your foundation? Yes. So you control the company that can take title to my home for $1. I am one of 3 foundation directors. Who are the others? My daughter and an independent fiduciary. Your daughter has never met me. She does not need to know your identity to administer a dormant structure. Detective Park closed her notebook. This arrangement may prevent the fraudulent sale, but it creates another question. Who knew about it? Robert, me, the original Montreal notary, and Daniel. Daniel looked up. I did not know about Marwood. You witnessed the protective option. I witnessed dozens of documents during the restructuring. I was never shown the trust declaration. You did not ask why the purchaser was a Quebec fiduciary. The purchaser name was blank in the version I witnessed. Thomas's face changed. You are certain? Daniel's voice hardened. I remember documents I witness. The 2 men stared at each other. I stepped between their silence. Show me Daniel's signature. Thomas slid the agreement across the table. Daniel examined the witness page. The signature looked like his. He took out his glasses, studied the ink, then held the page beneath the lamp. This is not the page I signed. Thomas remained still. How can you know? The paper is wrong. It is the same legal stock used by your firm. Not 9 years ago, we changed suppliers after a merger. This watermark was introduced 3 years later. Detective Park immediately placed the document in an evidence sleeve. Then the protective agreement may also contain a forged page. Thomas's composure finally broke. No, I collected it from Robert myself. Was the document bound when you received it? She asked. Yes. Did you watch every page being executed? No. Who prepared the final package? Thomas looked toward Daniel. His firm. Daniel's expression darkened. Which lawyer? Graham was seconded to your estates group at the time. Graham had never been a practicing lawyer. He had trained in finance. Then I remembered. For 1 year before joining the bank, he had worked as a corporate analyst at Daniel's firm. He would have handled document indexing, data rooms, and closing packages. He would have had access to signatures. He would have known where paper records were stored. He could have replaced a page, Nora said. Daniel shook his head. Why replace it then, 9 years before the fraud? Because he did not create the fraud 9 years later, I said. He began preparing for it 9 years earlier. The scale of it settled over the room. Ethan was impulsive. Graham was patient. One nephew created scenes. The other created systems. I had been watching the loud one while the quiet one learned how everything worked. Detective Park took the encrypted drive from the case. What is on this? Copies of Robert's investigation, Thomas said. You said the audit log was erased. It was. Robert recovered fragments from backup servers. Names. Access records, internal messages, payment traces. Why did you not bring this to police? Robert was not certain a crime had occurred. Covert searches and altered records are enough to investigate. He believed exposure would cause the person to disappear. Again, I said, he chose secrecy. Thomas looked tired now. He was trying to protect what you built. He was trying to control what happened after his death. No one answered. Detective Dufresne connected the drive to an isolated forensic laptop. It required 2 passwords. Thomas entered the first. The second, he said, belonged to me. I have never seen this drive. Robert chose a phrase you would know. A prompt appeared. The first thing you salved. I stared at the words. Robert and I had disagreed about many things, but I knew exactly what he meant. During the early years of our marriage, before the companies and the houses and the charitable boards, we bought a failing lumber operation near Parry Sound. The business was worth little. The surrounding land was worth less. A lender wanted us to clear the forest and sell the timber to reduce the debt. I refused. The trees were old-growth white pine. Robert thought I was being emotional. I thought he was being unimaginative. We spent 2 years restructuring the loan, sold the mill equipment, and placed the forest under a conservation covenant. It was the first thing we saved instead of sold. White pine, I said. The drive unlocked. Folders filled the screen. Forest Hill. Trust access. Banking relationships. Medical. Family. The last folder contained subfolders named for 7 relatives. Ethan. Graham. Patricia. My late brother-in-law Charles. 2 cousins. And me. Robert investigated you too, Nora asked. Apparently. I was not offended. Not yet. Detective Park opened Graham's folder first. The earliest record was 11 years old. An email from Graham to a data management contractor requesting retrieval of archived documents from the family office. He claimed he needed them for tax consolidation. The requested files included property deeds, trust schedules, powers of attorney, and Robert's shareholder agreements. A later email showed that Robert had challenged the request. Graham replied politely. He said the request had been made in error by a junior analyst. There was no junior analyst. The next record showed a payment from one of Graham's consulting companies to a private investigator. The investigator had conducted searches on Robert's health, my medical history, Thomas's travel, and Daniel's firm. Then the records stopped. Why only one payment? Detective Dufresne asked. Because he changed methods, Thomas said. The banking relationships folder contained compliance alerts from Northern Dominion Private Bank. Not official reports. Drafts. Someone inside the bank had sent them privately to Robert. One alert concerned repeated attempts by Graham to identify accounts where I was the beneficial owner but not the named account holder. Another concerned his interest in dormant trusts. A third showed that he had searched for safe deposit boxes connected to Robert. The bank had reprimanded him internally. No police report was filed. No regulator was informed. Who suppressed this? Detective Park asked. Thomas opened the message metadata. The approving executive was Graham's father-in-law, Richard Hollis, senior partner at the law firm holding the $20 million deposit. Except he had not always been a lawyer. Before joining Hollis Grant, Richard had served as general counsel for Northern Dominion. The network was not merely family. It was institutional. Graham knew the bank. Richard knew the law firm. Ethan had access to the house. Leonard could create medical credibility. Melanie could witness signatures. Patricia could provide emotional cover. Each person handled one part. No single participant needed to understand the whole plan. That was why it had survived. Detective Park opened the folder labeled medical. It contained a draft letter describing my supposed cognitive decline. The language was almost identical to Dr. Shaw's forged assessment, but the draft was dated 10 years earlier. My age had been updated. The symptoms had not. Robert found this 10 years ago, I asked. Yes, Thomas said. And still did not tell me. He confronted Graham indirectly. What does that mean? He mentioned that false incapacity claims were easy to disprove and carried serious criminal consequences. After that, the activity stopped. For 10 years. So it appeared. I thought of Graham at Christmas dinners. Graham sending flowers after Robert's death. Graham offering to help reorganize my investment reporting. Graham speaking softly about Ethan's irresponsibility. He had not distanced himself from Ethan because he disapproved. He had done it so no one would connect them. The front gate alarm sounded. Security called Nora. She listened, then turned to me. Patricia is outside. My sister. She says Ethan has disappeared. She's frightened. Detective Park stood. Do not let her in yet. I went to the monitor. Patricia sat in the back seat of a hired car, her face pale beneath the interior light. She held her phone with both hands. She looked 75 that night. Older than me, though she was 4 years younger. I pressed the intercom. Patricia. Her face lifted. Evelyn, thank God. Where is Ethan? I don't know. When did you last see him? An hour ago, maybe 2. He came to my house angry. He said you were trying to destroy him. What did you say? I told him to explain. And? He said the mansion was supposed to be sold. He said everyone had agreed. Who is everyone? He wouldn't tell me. Did you know about the forged power of attorney? Her mouth opened. No. Did you sign anything for him? No. Did you give him access to my documents? No. Did you tell him I was losing capacity? She began to cry. Not dramatically. Her face simply folded. I told Graham you had become difficult after Robert died. The answer was too precise to be invented quickly. What did Graham ask? He said he was worried. He asked whether you were forgetting meetings or making strange decisions. And what did you tell him? That you were grieving, that you became more suspicious. Did he ask about my doctors? Yes. When? Last year. The forged medical letter may have been planned for months. Patricia, did you give Ethan your old gate credentials? She hesitated. I gave him a card. When? 3 months ago. Why? He said he wanted to surprise you with photographs for Robert's memorial. There had been no memorial planned. But 3 months earlier, Ethan had spent 37 minutes alone in my library. The camera had likely been installed that night. Detective Park wrote something on a pad and held it toward me. Ask about Graham. Where is Graham? I asked. Patricia wiped her face. At my house. Every person in the library turned toward the screen. You said Ethan came to your house. He did. And Graham was there. He arrived later. Is he still there? He was when I left. Why did you leave him? He told me to come here. My hand tightened around the intercom control. Why? He said you were in danger. Detective Park muted the channel. This could be a diversion. Or Graham wants access to the house, Daniel said. Thomas closed the document case. Do not bring her inside. I looked at Patricia on the monitor. My sister. The woman who had defended Ethan after every theft, every lie, every ruined relationship. She had enabled him for decades. But fear in her face looked real. Real fear can still be useful to dishonest people. I unmuted the channel. Patricia, tell the driver to take you to the nearest police station. No, I need to see you. You need to speak with detectives. I haven't done anything. Then tell them the truth. Evelyn, please. Go to the station. Detective Park will arrange for officers to meet you. Patricia looked over her shoulder. The driver was speaking into his phone. Then the car's headlights turned off. Why did the driver stop the engine? I asked. I don't know. The driver opened his door and stepped out. Security magnified the image. He was not a hired driver. He was Leonard Shaw, Dr. Shaw walked around the car and opened Patricia's door. She did not seem surprised. He took the phone from her hand. Then he looked directly at the gate camera. "Mrs. Vale," he said, "your sister needs medical attention." Detective Park reached for her radio. Leonard continued. "She is confused and distressed. We are taking her somewhere safe." Patricia tried to reach for the phone. He pushed her back into the seat. That was enough. Security vehicles moved from concealed positions on both sides of the drive. The outer gate locked behind the sedan. Floodlights illuminated the road. Leonard ran. He made it 6 steps. A security officer caught him against the hood. Patricia screamed from the back seat. Detective Dufresne and 2 uniformed officers reached the gate moments later. Leonard was placed in handcuffs. Patricia was brought inside through the service entrance and examined by paramedics before police questioned her. She was not injured. She had been given a mild sedative. Leonard claimed he was treating her for acute anxiety. He had no prescription record. No consent form. No legitimate reason to transport her. In his coat pocket, police found 2 prepaid phones, a syringe, and a folded document. The document was a capacity assessment. Not mine. Patricia's. It stated that she lacked capacity to manage her property and appointed Ethan as her temporary decision-maker. The signature at the bottom was dated the following morning. It had not yet been signed. Ethan and Graham were not only taking my assets, they were preparing to take Patricia's too. When she understood that, she stopped defending her son. At 3:12 a.m., seated in the breakfast room beneath a wool blanket, Patricia told us everything she knew. It was not much. That was what made Graham effective. He had approached her gradually. He asked whether I was lonely, whether I forgot names, whether I repeated stories, whether I trusted Nora too much. He framed every question as concern. Then he suggested that the family should prepare in case I became incapacitated. Patricia agreed. She gave him copies of old family documents. She told him which doctors I had seen. She described my routines. She gave Ethan the gate card. She believed they were planning an intervention. "Did you ever discuss selling Ashbourne?" Detective Park asked. Ethan complained that Evelyn would leave everything to conservation charities. "Did she tell you that?" "No." "Who did?" "Graham." I looked at my sister. "My will leaves you a substantial trust." She stared at me. "What?" "And Ethan receives nothing directly because of his creditors. His share goes into a protected trust." Tears filled her eyes. "Graham said you had cut us out." I lied. "He showed me a document." "What document?" "A summary of your will." Daniel leaned forward. "There is no distributable summary. It had your firm's name. Another forgery. Or another stolen draft." Patricia covered her mouth. "I thought they were trying to protect us. They were trying to turn you against me. I told them things." "Yes. I'm sorry." Her apology did not erase the damage, but it changed the next move. "Call Graham," Detective Park said. Patricia lowered her hands. "What do I say?" "Tell him Leonard was delayed. Tell him Evelyn allowed you inside. Ask what you should do next." "He'll know." "Not if you sound frightened." "She is frightened," I said. Detective Park handed her one of the police recording phones. Patricia dialed. Graham answered on the first ring. "Are you in?" His voice was calm. Patricia looked at me. "Yes." "Where is Evelyn?" "In the library with police." A pause. "Did Leonard give you the package?" "No, security stopped him." The silence lasted longer this time. "Is he arrested?" "I don't know." "Listen carefully, do not mention my name." Patricia began to shake. "What am I supposed to do?" "Go upstairs." "Why?" "Evelyn keeps a blue leather box in Robert's dressing room. Bring it to the east service door." I knew the box. It contained Robert's personal seals, old company stamps, and handwritten account notes. Graham did not want jewelry. He wanted authentication tools. "Who will be there?" Patricia asked. "I'll arrange someone." "Ethan?" "No." "Where is he?" Graham's voice cooled. "Do not ask questions." "He's my son. He created a problem. What kind of problem? He went to the realtor without authorization. There it was. Confirmation that Graham directed the sequence. Patricia swallowed. What are you going to do to him? Nothing if he follows instructions. Is he with you? No. Where are you? Patricia. She looked at Detective Park. The detective nodded. My sister says the police found the sale agreement, Patricia said. She says Verdant Crown isn't real. Graham laughed softly. Verdant Crown is very real. Who owns it? You do not need to know. Is the house already sold? It will be. But Evelyn is alive. That has never been the obstacle. My sister's face changed. She finally heard him. Not as the polite nephew. Not as the responsible banker. As a man who regarded my existence as an administrative inconvenience. What happens to her? Patricia whispered. Graham did not answer immediately. Then he said, bring me the blue box. The call ended. Detective Park sent teams to Patricia's house and Graham's known addresses. They found no one. His phone disconnected from the network seconds after the call. His bank access credentials were disabled. His passport was flagged. The private jet terminals at Pearson, Billy Bishop, Hamilton, and Waterloo were notified. But Graham had planned for pressure. By dawn, he had vanished. Ethan vanished too. Leonard was held for assault, administering a substance without consent, possession of forged documents, and suspected conspiracy. Melanie Price was arrested at a condominium near King Street West while trying to destroy a laptop in a bathtub. Richard Hollis was intercepted at Pearson with a ticket to Zurich. He claimed he was traveling for a client matter. In his luggage, police found 2 hardware wallets and a list of numbered accounts. But neither Graham nor Ethan appeared in any arrest report. At 7:40 a.m., Claire Bennett called. She had received a message from Ethan at 6:58. He apologized for the previous day's misunderstanding. He said he had obtained updated documentation. He asked her to meet him at Ashbourne at noon with a prospective buyer. Claire had not responded. Did he name the buyer? I asked. No. Did he attach anything? A new capacity letter and a court order. A court order. It says he has been appointed guardian of property. Daniel took the phone. Send it immediately. The order looked authentic. It bore the seal of the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. It named Ethan as my temporary guardian. It authorized him to preserve and dispose of assets to prevent financial harm. It had been issued at 5:36 the previous evening. Before Claire warned me. Before Ethan came to the gate. Before police became involved. This cannot be real, Nora said. Daniel read the endorsement. It is. How could a judge appoint Ethan without notifying Evelyn? Emergency applications can proceed without notice in rare circumstances. Based on what evidence? He turned the screen. Affidavits from Patricia, Graham, Leonard, and 3 supposed employees of my companies. Bank records showing unusual transactions. Medical records claiming progressive cognitive decline. Photographs of me entering a hospital. One photograph was real. I had visited a board member recovering from surgery. The caption said I was receiving neurological treatment. The financial records were manipulated. Transfers I had authorized for legitimate investments were presented as reckless losses. Donation to the Conservation Trust was described as asset dissipation. Even my refusal to sell Ashbourne was cited as irrational fixation. They had not merely forged a power of attorney. They had built a legal narrative. Layer by layer. For months. Perhaps years. Daniel reached the final page. The order expires in 48 hours unless confirmed at a hearing. When is the hearing? I asked. Tomorrow morning. Then we appear and destroy it. It is not that simple. Why? Because the order authorizes Ethan to act until it is suspended. He is a fugitive. He has not been charged. Police are searching for him. That helps, but the land transaction may still proceed if a third party claims it relied on a valid court order. Thomas looked at the time. When does Verdant Crown intend to accelerate closing? The answer arrived 11 minutes later. Title counsel called. An electronic transfer had been submitted. Not for 12 days from now. For that morning. The purchaser's lawyers claimed that the seller's incapacity created material risk. Under an acceleration clause, they demanded immediate completion. The purchase funds, $128 million after the deposit, had been delivered to the law firm's trust account. The transfer documents were signed. The court order was attached. The system had flagged one inconsistency. The property identification number on the mansion did not match the PIN in the protective option registered by Marwood. Robert's trap had activated. But the corrective deed for the real third parcel had not been registered. Marwood had not exercised its $1 option. Thomas called the Montreal trustee. No one answered. He called the independent fiduciary. Disconnected. He called daughter. Her assistant said she had left home before sunrise for an emergency meeting. Thomas's face drained of color. What? I asked. He dialed again. This time, someone answered. Thomas put the call on speaker. A man's voice said, "Mr. Calder." Thomas gripped the phone. "Who is this?" "You know who it is." I recognized Graham immediately. Polished. Controlled. Almost gentle. Thomas looked toward Detective Park. She signaled for the technical unit to begin tracing. "Where is my daughter?" Thomas asked. "Safe." "What have you done?" "Nothing she cannot recover from." "Put her on the phone." "No." Thomas's hand trembled. It was the first visible sign of fear I had ever seen in him. Graham continued. "The Marwood directors met this morning. They approved a change in control." "That is impossible." "Your daughter signed." "Under duress." "She signed. The independent director would never approve it." "He resigned." "Who replaced him?" A notification appeared on Nora's laptop. Corporate registry update. Marwood Fiduciaire Inc. New director, Graham Vale. New controlling shareholder, Verdant Crown SA. The trap had been stolen. Robert created a hidden structure to stop an unauthorized sale. Graham found it. Then he took control of the very company designed to protect me. "You spent years searching for Marwood," I said. There was a pause. Then Graham spoke my name. "Aunt Evelyn." No affection. No shame. "You should have sold the house when values peaked. You forged medical evidence. I documented a decline. You stole conservation land. I repositioned an underperforming asset. You drugged your mother's sister." Leonard panicked. "You kidnapped Thomas's daughter. I invited her to correct a governance problem." Detective Park motioned for us to keep him talking. "Where is Ethan?" I asked. "Ufferson." "Is he alive?" Graham said nothing. Patricia made a sound behind me. A broken animal sound. I kept my voice level. "You needed him to present the forged documents. You needed him visible so police would focus on him." He was enthusiastic. "You promised him part of the sale. He believed he deserved half. And what did you plan to give him?" "Enough to disappear. You never intended to share. He lacks discipline. You used him. Everyone uses what is available." I looked at Thomas. He was staring at the registry record as if he could reverse it through force. "What do you want?" I asked. "The blue box." "Why?" "Robert kept a seal in it." "Which seal?" "The original seal of Vale Land Corporation. You already forged its resolutions. Electronic records create questions, original seals create confidence. And if I give it to you..." The transaction closes. Thomas's daughter returns home. Patricia's son receives legal assistance. You retain sufficient assets to live comfortably. You expect me to accept the theft of $160 million. It is not about the mansion. There. The first honest sentence. What is it about? The land beneath it. The development rights. No. I looked at Thomas. He seemed equally confused. Graham continued. "Robert discovered something during the restoration. He hid the report. He moved the adjoining parcel into Marwood. He altered the maps. Then he created enough legal noise to make everyone think the value was residential." "What report?" "You have the key." My eyes moved to the brass key on the table. "The Montreal deposit box." Thomas followed my gaze. That box contains the original deed, he said. Not only the deed, Graham replied. You opened it? No, Robert designed the mandate so 2 parties must attend. Which parties? I asked. The protector and the beneficial owner. Thomas and me. Graham could control Marwood. He could force the mansion transfer. He could take the corporate parcels. But he could not open the deposit box without us. What is in the report? I asked. I have only seen references. Then why risk everything? Because Verdant Crown's investors have already valued it. Based on references? Based on what lies under 5 acres of Forest Hill. The old drainage map remained open on the table. Buried channels. Access corridors. Subsurface easements. But those were not worth $160 million. Not alone. Thomas suddenly reached for Robert's investigation drive. He opened the Forest Hill folder and searched for the word report. One encrypted file appeared. Calderon Geological Assessment. Thomas entered his password. The file demanded mine again. The second thing you refused to sell. I closed my eyes. The second thing Robert and I saved had not been land. It had been information. Years ago, one of our companies commissioned mineral surveys in northern Ontario. A buyer tried to acquire the raw exploration data before results were public. I refused. The phrase Robert used afterward had become a private joke between us. Truth before price, I said. The file opened. The assessment was dated 14 years earlier. During restoration of Ashbourne's East Foundation, contractors encountered a sealed brick tunnel unrelated to the municipal drainage system. Inside were timber supports, rail fragments, and mineral residue. The geologist concluded that the tunnel connected to a 19th-century excavation running beneath several Forest Hill properties. Not a gold mine. Not oil. Something stranger. The report identified extensive deposits of blue calcite and rare fluorite specimens. Commercially, the minerals were modest. Scientifically and historically, the underground site was unique. But attached to the geological report was an archaeological memorandum. Workers had found crates in a collapsed chamber. Inside the crates were ledgers, correspondence, bearer certificates, and sealed metal boxes dating from the 1930s and 1940s. The preliminary inventory referenced European banks, industrial families, and art transactions conducted during the Second World War. Assets hidden from governments. Assets possibly stolen from families fleeing persecution. Records that could expose ownership claims worth billions. Not 160 million. Billions. My title had never only been a mansion. The number Ethan advertised was a distraction. A deliberately absurd public valuation hiding a far more dangerous private asset. Robert had sealed the tunnel again. He had placed the true access parcel in trust. He had hidden the full report in Montreal. And someone connected to Verdant Crown had discovered enough to know the archive existed. Graham's voice came through the phone. Now you understand. I looked at the names in the preliminary inventory. Some belonged to companies that still operated. Some belonged to foundations. Some belonged to families powerful enough to bury scandals for generations. This is why Verdant Crown is funding you, I said. Yes. They do not want the records. No. They want to destroy them. Graham remained silent. That silence was confirmation. Detective Park's technician shook his head. The call was routing through multiple relays. No location. Graham spoke again. Bring the blue box and the brass key to Union Station at 4 this afternoon, you and Thomas, no police. And if we refuse? The sale closes, the tunnel is sealed permanently, Thomas loses his daughter. What happens to Ethan? He should have followed instructions. Patricia stood. Let me speak to him. I handed her the phone. Graham, where is my son? Go home, Aunt Patricia. Is Ethan alive? You need rest. Answer me. He made a separate arrangement. With whom? Richard. Richard Hollis. The man stopped at Pearson. What arrangement? She demanded. He tried to sell information about Verdant Crown to another buyer. Ethan had betrayed the conspiracy before the money even arrived. What did they do to him? Patricia asked. Graham's voice became quieter. I do not know. Then the call ended. At that same moment, the front security desk received a delivery. No courier had approached the gate. A small padded envelope had been placed inside the mailbox at the edge of the property. The bomb unit examined it before bringing it inside. There was no explosive. Only a car key and a printed parking receipt. The receipt came from an underground garage beneath a luxury condominium on Bloor Street. Police reached the garage 22 minutes later. The key opened Ethan's Range Rover. He was inside the rear cargo area. Alive. Barely. His wrists were bound, his face was bruised, a plastic bag had been pulled over his head and torn open near the mouth. On his chest was a note. He talked too much. Paramedics transported him to Sunnybrook. He regained consciousness for 30 seconds in the ambulance. Long enough to say one name. Not Graham. Not Richard. Not Leonard. He said Claire. Then his heart stopped. The paramedics revived him. But the word traveled back to Ashbourne before he reached the hospital. Everyone looked at me. Claire Bennett. The realtor who had recognized the forged signature instantly. The woman who had warned me. The woman who had scanned every document before Ethan left. The woman who knew the mansion was being marketed at an impossible price. Detective Park called her office. Claire was not there. Her managing broker said she had left after receiving an urgent request from me. I had made no request. Security reviewed the recordings of Claire's first call. Her voice. Her number. Her account of Ethan's meeting. All real. But one detail returned to me. Claire said she remembered me from a botanical fundraiser 7 years earlier. I remembered speaking with a luxury realtor. I had never confirmed it was her. Nora searched photographs from the event. The realtor in the photographs was not Claire Bennett. It was another woman from the same firm. Detective Park opened Claire's professional profile. Her biography looked legitimate. 20 years in Toronto luxury real estate. Awards. Sales. Interviews. But the brokerage's licensing records told a different story. Claire Bennett had joined the firm only 8 months earlier. Before that, her history disappeared. No previous brokerage registration in Ontario. No public sales record. No archived interviews. The profile had been manufactured. Detective Dufresne called from Ethan's hospital. He's awake again. Can he speak? Park asked. Barely. What did he mean by Claire? There was noise in the background. Then Dufresne returned. He says she gave him the forged documents. The room became completely still. Claire had not caught the fraud. She had prepared it. She had called me because Ethan had deviated from the plan. He had tried to hire her publicly instead of using the private sale already arranged with Verdant Crown. Her warning had not saved me. It had pushed me into activating every hidden defense, contacting Thomas, exposing Robert's files, and bringing the brass key into one room. Graham had not been trying to avoid discovery. He had been guiding it. And Claire was the person who recognized the fraud instantly because she was the person who designed it. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Claire's voice was warm and composed. Mrs. Vale, I'm afraid Ethan misunderstood his role. Where are you? Closer than you think. Every screen in the library went black. The lights followed. Security radios filled with static. Then the old service bell beneath the library began to ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. A sound no one had heard in decades. Thomas turned toward the fireplace. Behind the carved wooden wall, something moved. The hidden tunnel beneath Ashbourne had been opened from the inside. The fireplace shifted inward with a grinding sound. Not the mantel. The entire walnut panel behind it. A narrow black seam opened along the wall, releasing a current of cold mineral air into the library. Dust rolled across the carpet. Somewhere beneath us, metal struck stone. Detective Park drew her weapon. Everyone away from the wall. Emergency lights should have activated. They did not. The blackout had reached the backup system. Nora switched on her phone flashlight, but the beam flickered as if the battery were failing. Thomas tried his, same result. Signal jammer, Detective Dufresne said through the radio before static swallowed his voice. The service bell rang again. This time I realized it was not ringing randomly. 3 short pulls. 2 long. 3 short. Robert had taught me that pattern during the restoration. It was an old household code used by servants when the mechanical bell system still connected the kitchen, bedrooms, and lower service corridors. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short meant fire below stairs. No one had used it since 1954. Someone inside the tunnel knew the history of my house. "Claire," I said. Detective Park moved toward the opening. "Stay behind me." The hidden panel stopped after opening less than half a meter. Beyond it stood a brick passage sloping downward. A pale work light glowed somewhere far below. A figure appeared. Not Claire. A young woman stumbled through the gap with both hands raised. Her face was streaked with dirt, one sleeve of her blouse had been torn away, a plastic restraint hung from her wrist. Thomas made a sound I had never heard from him. "Rachel." His daughter collapsed before reaching the carpet. Thomas caught her. Detective Park kept her weapon aimed at the tunnel. "Is anyone behind you?" Rachel Calder struggled to breathe. "Yes." "How many?" "I don't know." "Are they armed?" "Yes." "Where is Graham?" She shook her head. "I never saw him." "Claire." Rachel looked at me. "She's not Claire." The service bell stopped. Then a woman spoke from inside the passage. "Rachel, you were told not to run." The voice was the same one that had called me from the brokerage. Warm. Controlled. "Close." Detective Park aimed toward the sound. "Come out with your hands visible." The woman laughed softly. "You have no communications, no exterior lights, and 3 officers unconscious near the east gate. I would consider whether shouting is useful." Park pressed her radio. "Nothing." Nora crouched beside Rachel. "Are you hurt?" "Not badly." "Did they inject you?" "No, they took me from my car." Thomas touched his daughter's face. "I'm sorry." Rachel stared at him with fury. "You should be." A metallic click came from the passage. Detective Park pushed us toward the far side of the library. Down. Gunfire struck the mantel. Stone fragments exploded over the carpet. Park fired twice into the opening. The hidden panel began to close. "Move," she shouted. Detective Dufresne reached the wall before the gap disappeared. He jammed a brass fireplace tool into the track. The motor groaned against it. A hand appeared through the opening. It held a compact pistol. Dufresne slammed the iron poker downward. The gun fell inside the library. Park kicked it away. Someone screamed inside the tunnel. Then footsteps retreated into darkness. The panel remained open by less than 20 centimeters. Not enough for a person. Enough for smoke. A gray cloud curled through the gap. Rachel coughed. "They're burning the archive." My fear became anger so quickly it felt almost peaceful. "Where?" "Below the east garden. There's a chamber beneath the old conservatory." Thomas helped her stand. "How did you get out?" "They took me there to force you to transfer Marwood. After I signed, they left one guard. The lights failed for a few seconds. I ran." "You signed the corporate resolutions?" "They had my son." Thomas went still. Rachel continued. "They sent me a live video. He was tied to a chair." "Where is he?" "I don't know." "You did what they wanted and they still kept him." "They said he would be released after the sale closed." Detective Park examined the wall. "We need another entrance." "There is one," I said. Everyone turned. The East Garden tunnel was not entirely unknown to me. Robert had concealed the archival chamber, the trust structure, and the geological report. But he had shown me an older route during construction. At the time, I thought it was merely a 19th century cold storage passage. It began beneath the wine cellar. The contractor sealed it after discovering unstable brickwork. Or I had been told they sealed it. "The basement," I said. "There is a service corridor behind the south wine racks." Nora looked at the dark screens. "If they control the house systems, they'll see us moving. Then we do not use the corridors." The library had 3 doors. One led to the main hall. One to the study. The third, hidden in the paneling, opened into a narrow servant's stair running directly to the basement laundry. Robert insisted on preserving it because he liked architectural ghosts. For once, his obsession with old mechanisms was useful. I pressed the latch. The door opened. Detective Park divided us quickly. She and Dufresne would enter the basement passage. Thomas would remain with Rachel. Nora would take them through the servants' stair to the reinforced storage room, where an independent landline connected directly to a security company outside Toronto. I would go with the detectives. No, Park said. I know the route. You can describe it. The entrance mechanism is hidden. Show us, then return upstairs. If Claire wants the brass key, she believes I have it. Thomas checked the table. The key was gone. We all looked at Rachel. She shook her head. Then Nora pointed toward the floor near the fireplace. The document case had been knocked over during the gunfire. The brass key was no longer beside it. Someone had reached through the gap while we were focused on Rachel and taken it. Detective Park swore under her breath. They have the key, I said, but the Montreal box requires 2 parties. Unless they take you, Nora replied. Exactly. Park understood. I was not only a liability. I was bait. And bait has value when it knows the hook is visible. We descended the servants' stair. The air grew colder at each landing. The mansion's electrical systems were silent, no ventilation, no pumps, no hum from the boilers. At the basement level, emergency lights flickered briefly, then died again. Dufresne opened the door into the old laundry. The room smelled of stone, metal, and detergent. Copper pipes ran along the ceiling. Rows of unused linen presses lined one wall. We moved through the storage corridor toward the wine cellar. Halfway there, we found the first security officer. He lay beside the electrical control room. Alive. A red mark showed where a device had been pressed against his neck. Dufresne checked his pulse. Stun weapon. Park whispered into her radio again. Only static. The control room door was open. Inside, wires had been cut from the backup panel. A portable unit on the floor transmitted a pulsing green light. Dufresne disconnected it. Our phone flashlights stabilized immediately. Signal jammer. Park's radio produced a broken voice. East perimeter compromised, 2 suspects. She responded. Interior team in basement, send tactical units to the east guard gun, possible armed suspects below ground. The transmission cut out again. The second jammer remained active elsewhere. We reached the wine cellar. Thousands of bottles rested in oak racks under the arched ceiling. Robert had collected Bordeaux. I preferred Niagara wines and told him regularly that half his collection tasted like expensive furniture. The south wall held 6 floor-to-ceiling racks. I moved to the third. Behind a 1982 Chateau Margaux was a small iron plate shaped like a vine leaf. I pressed it. Nothing happened. No power, Dufresne said. The mechanism is manual. I removed the bottle and reached into the empty cradle. My fingers found a recessed handle. I pulled hard. A section of shelving moved forward by 2 centimeters. Park and Dufresne took the weight and swung it open. Behind it stood a brick arch sealed with wooden boards. The boards looked old. The screws did not. Someone had opened this route recently and resealed it. Dufresne removed the first board with a crowbar. Smoke drifted through. Not enough to suggest a major fire. Enough to confirm Rachel's warning. We entered one at a time. The passage was low and damp. Old rails ran along the floor, remnants of whatever operation had once moved materials beneath Forest Hill. Electrical cables had been added along one wall. New surveillance cameras were fixed at intervals. Their indicator lights were dark. They cut their own system when they disabled the house, Park said. Or they wanted us to believe they did. She aimed her flashlight at the first camera. A tiny red light blinked. Still transmitting. Claire knew where we were. I stepped directly beneath it. You wanted me underground, I said. I'm here. Park glared at me. But nothing moved. We continued. The passage divided after 50 meters. The left tunnel descended toward the municipal drainage system. The right curved beneath the east garden. A faded symbol had been painted on the brick, a white pine tree. Robert's mark. We took the right branch. The smoke thickened. Voices echoed ahead. One male. One female. The woman spoke sharply. Hollis was supposed to transfer the full amount. A man answered. His accounts are frozen. Then use the reserve. Graham controls it. He is no longer answering. Claire was not commanding the operation. She was losing control of it. Park motioned for us to stop. Through a break in the brickwork, we could see part of the chamber. It was larger than the geological report suggested. Steel shelving filled the space. Old wooden crates stood stacked against one wall. Modern equipment occupied the center: computers, scanners, hard drives, industrial lights, document cases. A small fire burned inside a metal bin. They were not burning the archive. They were burning copies. Near the far wall, 2 men loaded sealed crates onto an electric utility cart. Claire stood beside them. Her appearance had changed. No tailored brokerage suit. No restrained jewelry. She wore black trousers, boots, and a fitted jacket with a communications wire running behind one ear. She looked younger without the professional costume. 40, perhaps. Not 52, as her real estate profile claimed. The man arguing with her wore gloves and a respirator around his neck. I recognized him from Richard Hollis's law firm website. Martin Grant. Managing partner of Hollis Grant LLC, the firm holding the deposit. Claire lifted a metal case. The key gets us into Montreal. Not without Vale and Calder, Martin said. Calder's daughter is enough to control him. Vale is with police. She came into the tunnel. Martin turned toward the passage. He knew. Claire smiled. She always comes toward the property. Detective Park whispered, "They are waiting for us." A second voice came from behind. "You should listen to her." Dufresne turned. A man stepped from the dark left-hand tunnel holding a shotgun. Ethan. His hospital gown showed beneath a stolen paramedic jacket. Medical tape remained on his neck. Bruising covered his face. He looked barely able to stand. The shotgun remained steady. "You left the hospital," I said. "They tried to kill me. And now you're helping them." "I'm helping myself." Detective Park aimed at him. "Drop the weapon." Ethan laughed, then winced from pain. "You first. Your heart stopped less than 3 hours ago. So did my loyalty." His eyes moved toward the chamber. "Graham abandoned me. Claire put me in that car. Richard's men were supposed to scare me, not finish me." Claire called from inside. "Ethan, bring them in." He tightened his grip. Park spoke evenly. "She tried to murder you. She says Graham ordered it. She gave you forged papers and used you as a visible suspect. She also promised me $20 million. You believe her?" "No." That answer surprised me. "Then what are you doing?" I asked. "Getting proof. By pointing a shotgun at police. By staying useful long enough to survive." His face was pale beneath the bruises. I saw desperation, but also calculation. Ethan had always been impulsive. He was not stupid. He knew everyone in the chamber expected him to die eventually. "Claire has the key," he said quietly. "The archive inventory is in the metal case. She plans to move everything before the tactical team reaches the garden." "Ethan," Claire called again, "now." He looked at me. "I need you to trust me." I nearly laughed. "You forged my name. Graham told me you had already transferred the property into a private structure. He said the power of attorney was needed to recover my father's share. You knew the medical letter was false. I knew it was exaggerated. You told a realtor I was in care. She told me what to say. You took $11 million against Muskoka. That was Graham. The account was yours. He opened it. You signed. He said it was temporary financing. Every confession came wrapped in blame. Even with a shotgun in his hands and betrayal on every side, Ethan could not speak one sentence without moving responsibility elsewhere. "You are not a victim," I said. His mouth hardened. "I know." It was the first honest thing I had ever heard him say. Then he lowered the shotgun. Detective Park moved immediately. She took the weapon and pushed him against the wall. Claire shouted. Martin raised a pistol inside the chamber. Dufresne fired first. The bullet struck the metal shelf beside Martin's head. He dropped behind a crate. The chamber erupted. One of the loaders fired toward the passage. Park pulled me down as brick fragments burst above us. Ethan crawled toward the chamber and kicked the utility cart's control lever. The cart accelerated without a driver. It crashed into the central equipment table, throwing computers and document scanners onto the floor. Claire ran toward the far tunnel carrying the metal case and brass key. "Stop her!" Ethan yelled. Dufresne entered the chamber behind a ballistic shield taken from one of the attackers. Park followed. I should have remained in the passage. Instead, I ran after Claire. She disappeared through a steel door in the far wall. The door led into the original excavation tunnel. The ceiling dropped lower, timber supports leaned under the weight of soil and stone. Claire's boots struck the rails ahead. She knew the route. I did not. But she carried something Robert had protected for 14 years. Documents belonging not to me but to families who may have spent generations searching for them. I would not let her destroy them. The tunnel ended at a vertical shaft beneath the conservatory. A steel ladder rose toward a circular hatch. Claire was halfway up. "Who are you?" I called. She stopped, then looked down. "My name is Elena Weiss." The name meant nothing. Claire Bennett never existed. She existed. She died in Montreal in 1998. I used the identity because no one had maintained the records carefully. Why Verdant Crown? To expose the people behind it. You work for them. I infiltrated them. You forged my documents. To force the archive into the open. You nearly killed Ethan. I kept him alive. He was suffocating in a car. The bag had ventilation slits. His heart stopped. He had taken cocaine before the meeting. That was not part of my plan. Her calmness disturbed me more than anger would have. You kidnapped Rachel. Martin did. You used her. Yes. You threatened her son. He was never in danger. The video was recorded with his consent. I looked up at her. Rachel believed it. She needed to. Every person involved believed necessity transformed cruelty into strategy. Robert. Graham. Claire. Perhaps me. You called the brokerage because Ethan went off script, I said. Yes. You wanted me to discover the fraud. Yes. You wanted Thomas to bring the drive and key. Yes. And now you're stealing the archive. No, I'm preventing Martin from taking it. Then give me the case. I cannot. Because your husband's preliminary inventory is wrong. She climbed another rung. What did he miss? He did not miss it, he hid it. Hide what? Elena reached the hatch. Before opening it, she looked down again. The archive is not only evidence of stolen European assets. Then what is it? It contains proof that Verdant Crown was built with money your husband helped move. The words landed harder than the gunfire. Robert investigated them. Robert worked with them. No. Before he became the man you knew. I knew him for 46 years. You knew what he chose to tell you. She pushed open the hatch. Daylight spilled down the shaft. I climbed after her. The hatch opened beneath a stone planter inside the conservatory. Rain struck the glass roof. The east garden beyond was filled with police vehicles and tactical officers. Elena emerged with both hands visible, the metal case hanging from one wrist. Officers shouted commands. She dropped to her knees. For 1 second, I thought she was surrendering. Then the conservatory windows exploded inward. Not from gunfire. From a controlled blast beneath the garden. The floor lifted. Glass, soil, and stone filled the air. I struck the ground. When I opened my eyes, Elena was gone. The metal case remained. The brass key did not. A new opening had appeared beneath the broken tiles, leading into another branch of the tunnel. Tactical officers pulled me from the debris. Detective Park reached the conservatory minutes later with blood on her sleeve. Martin Grant is in custody, she said. 1 suspect dead, 1 wounded. Ethan is alive. Elena escaped. We have the perimeter sealed. She knows the underground routes. So do we now. I handed her the case. It was locked. Not electronically. Mechanically. The emblem on the front showed a crown wrapped in vines. Verdant Crown. Thomas arrived with Rachel after the mansion's systems were restored. When he saw the emblem, he sat down. You know it, I said. Yes. How? Robert showed me once. When? Before he died. What did he tell you? That if this case ever surfaced, I was to destroy it unopened. Detective Park held it closer. He instructed you to destroy evidence. He called it a containment file. Did he say what it contained? No. You expect me to believe that? I asked. Thomas looked toward the damaged garden. Robert believed knowledge could be more dangerous than money. That sounds convenient. It sounded paranoid then. And now people are shooting beneath your house. Daniel joined us from the library. He had spent the gunfight on the secure line with title counsel. The Ashbourne transfer had been paused. Not cancelled. Verdant Crown's lawyers had filed an emergency motion demanding completion under the guardianship order. At the same time, Marwood, now controlled by Graham, had exercised the $1 option over Ashbourne. 2 separate transfers were competing for title. Both relied on documents connected to my supposed incapacity. Both were set for judicial review the next morning. Where is Graham? I asked. No confirmed location, Park said. We believe he left Toronto before the airport alerts. By road. Possibly. Thomas stared at the locked case. He may already be in Montreal. The deposit box. The brass key. Elena had escaped with it. Graham controlled Marwood. The box required the protector and beneficial owner. But if Graham had forged my incapacity once, he could attempt to replace me legally. He will seek an order authorizing Marwood to access the box, Daniel said. He cannot obtain it before tomorrow. He obtained guardianship without notice. Through false evidence. The order remains valid until suspended. I looked at the clock. It was not yet noon. The title hearing was the next morning. The Montreal deposit box could become vulnerable before then. We go to Montreal, I said. Park shook her head. You remain under active threat. That is true here or there. You are also a witness. I'm the beneficial owner required to access the box. Exactly why you should not approach it. If Graham reaches it first, the archive report disappears. We can notify Montreal police. And tell them what? A brass key was stolen from a hidden tunnel beneath a Forest Hill mansion during an armed conspiracy involving a fraudulent guardianship order. They have heard stranger things. Not with this much money attached. Thomas stood. I'm going. You cannot access it without me, I said. The mandate requires the protector and beneficial owner. Rachel may now be recognized as protector because Marwood recorded my removal. You were removed under duress. Which creates uncertainty. Graham will exploit that. Rachel looked at her father. What did you sign? I signed nothing. Then you are still protector. Marwood's registry says otherwise. Registry filings do not make fraud lawful. No, but they make banks cautious. Detective Park's phone rang. She listened without speaking. Then her expression changed. What happened? I asked. She ended the call. Graham has contacted the court. Daniel went pale. Which court? The same judge who issued the temporary guardianship order. On what basis? He claims Ethan's criminal conduct proves the family is unstable. He says you are being manipulated by staff and police. He has requested that the guardianship be transferred from Ethan to himself. Can the judge do that today? He has scheduled an emergency video conference in 90 minutes. I laughed once. It was not amusement. Graham had planned every branch. If Ethan succeeded, Ethan held the legal authority. If Ethan failed, his failure became evidence that Graham was the responsible alternative. He will ask for control over Marwood and my personal affairs at the same time, I said. Daniel nodded. And he will present the title dispute as proof immediate action is needed. Then we appear. The hearing may be limited to counsel. I am the person supposedly incapable. Which is why your appearance matters. We returned to the library. The bullet-damaged mantel had been covered. Technical teams moved through the hidden passage. Police photographed every document and device in the underground chamber. The court hearing began at 1:37 p.m. The judge appeared on a secure video link. Justice Miriam Sloan. She was in her 60s with rimless glasses and a voice that made interruption feel physically dangerous. Graham appeared from an undisclosed office. He wore a dark suit. No tie. He looked rested. Behind him stood a plain gray wall. His lawyer was not Richard Hollis. It was a litigation partner from one of Canada's largest firms. Someone with no obvious connection to the conspiracy. Someone Graham could present as independent. Daniel appeared for me. A lawyer from the public guardian and trustee also joined. Justice Sloan began without ceremony. This court issued temporary relief yesterday based on evidence that now appears substantially unreliable. Graham's lawyer spoke first. My client agrees, Your Honor. Ethan Vale deceived multiple family members and professionals. Mr. Graham Vale seeks to stabilize the situation and protect Mrs. Vale. I leaned toward the camera. I do not require protection from anyone in that family. Justice Sloan looked at me. Mrs. Vale, you will have an opportunity to speak. I have been waiting since yesterday. Daniel placed a hand near mine. Not touching. Warning. Graham's lawyer continued. He described Graham as an experienced banker, a trusted family advisor, a man who had discovered Ethan's misuse of documents and attempted to intervene. He presented Graham's control of Marwood as emergency asset protection. He characterized the transfer of conservation land as a temporary restructuring. He said the hidden archive beneath Ashbourne created risks that I did not fully understand. That last statement revealed too much. Justice Sloan noticed. What archive? Graham's lawyer paused. A collection of historical documents discovered on the property. When was the court informed of this yesterday? It was not. Why? My client learned the extent only recently. I looked at Graham's image. He remained expressionless. Daniel presented evidence from Claire's brokerage files, the forged medical letter, the fraudulent trust resolutions, and the police investigation. He emphasized that Graham was a suspect. Graham's lawyer objected. No charges have been laid against my client. Detective Park had joined by affidavit but could not disclose the full active investigation. Justice Sloan asked Graham directly. Mr. Vale, where are you? My counsel has advised me not to disclose my location due to threats from Ethan's associates. Are you in Ontario? Yes. That was a lie. I could hear it. Not because his voice changed. Because the window behind him reflected a strip of daylight too bright for Toronto's storm-darkened afternoon. Nora noticed too. She wrote on a pad. Sun angle wrong. Could be Montreal. Could be somewhere farther east. Justice Sloan questioned Graham about Marwood. He claimed Thomas had become compromised. He claimed Rachel voluntarily approved governance changes. He claimed the trust structure needed immediate professional management. Then he made his move. Your Honor, there is a risk Mrs. Vale will travel to Montreal and remove or destroy sensitive documents from a secured repository. The judge looked at me. Do you intend to travel? Yes. Daniel closed his eye. Justice Sloan leaned forward. For what purpose? To inspect property held for my benefit. Do you know what the repository contains? Not fully. Then why is immediate travel necessary? Because the man asking you to stop me has spent years trying to obtain it. Graham spoke for the first time. Aunt Evelyn, please. I looked directly at the camera. You forged a court application using false medical evidence. That was Ethan. You accessed our family records 11 years ago. For tax work. You transferred conservation land to a company connected to Ethan. To protect it from liabilities. You took control of Marwood this morning. Because Thomas concealed material information. You ordered Ethan killed. His face finally changed. Only slightly. But the judge saw it. Graham's lawyer objected immediately. Justice Sloan raised one hand. Mrs. Vale, that is an extremely serious allegation. Ethan was found bound in a vehicle after trying to sell information about Verdant Crown. He identified people involved in the scheme. Police can confirm. Park spoke. The investigation is active, Your Honor. We can confirm Mr. Ethan Vale was found in life-threatening condition and that multiple persons connected to the transactions are in custody. Is Mr. Graham Vale wanted? We seek to interview him urgently. Graham's lawyer said, My client is willing to cooperate through counsel. Park replied, Then he can disclose his location. Silence. Justice Sloan removed her glasses. Mr. Vale, where are you? Graham looked toward someone off-screen. Then his video froze. The connection ended. His lawyer claimed technical failure. No one believed him. Justice Sloan suspended Ethan's guardianship immediately. She refused Graham's application. She prohibited any transfer of Ashbourne, the adjoining parcels, or Marwood assets pending a full hearing. She ordered all parties to preserve documents. Then she addressed me. Mrs. Vale, the court will not prohibit you from traveling. However, given the active police investigation, I strongly recommend that any access to the repository occur under law enforcement supervision. Agreed. Daniel turned toward me, surprised. I had no intention of making his day more difficult than necessary. Not until we reached Montreal. The hearing ended. For the first time since Claire's call, Graham had lost a legal advantage. But not the operational one. He had the key. Or Elena did. He controlled people inside Marwood. He had investors powerful enough to fund a $148 million purchase and an armed underground operation. And he knew what was in the deposit box. We left Toronto at 4:20 p.m. aboard a police aircraft from Buttonville. I traveled with Detective Park, Thomas, Rachel, Daniel, and 2 officers from the financial crimes team. Nora remained at Ashbourne to coordinate the title injunction and corporate freezes. Ethan stayed under guard at Sunnybrook. Before departure, he asked to speak with me. He looked small in the hospital bed. Machines tracked his heart. A uniformed officer stood outside the door. "You came," he said. "For information." "Not because I'm family." "You used family as a tool, do not ask me to use it as an excuse." He looked toward the window. "Graham told me my father's shares were stolen. They were sold." He showed me a letter from Robert admitting the valuation was manipulated. "Did you verify it?" I wanted it to be true. That answer carried more weight than denial. "What did Claire promise you?" $20 million in immunity. She cannot give immunity. I know that now. What is in the metal case? His eyes moved back to me. Original ownership records. For Verdant Crown. For Robert. What do they show? That he was not only moving money. What else? He was identifying people. For whom? I don't know, intelligence services, banks, governments, maybe all of them. Did Graham see the documents? Only summaries. Who has the originals? Montreal. The deposit box. Some, not all. Where are the others? He hesitated, then whispered, inside the house. The underground chamber. No. Where? Robert's coffin. I stared at him. That is not funny. I'm not joking. How would you know? Graham opened the cemetery records. Robert's burial vault was modified before the funeral. Modified by whom? A company Martin Grant controlled. My husband had been buried at Mount Pleasant Cemetery. I attended the interment. I watched the casket lowered. I had never been told the vault contained anything else. Why hide records in a grave? Because no court order searches a dead man. Ethan's breathing became shallow. Graham said the Montreal box tells you how to open the vault. I stood. Anything else? He closed his eyes. Claire is Elena Weiss. Her grandparents are in the archive. What does that mean? The records prove their assets were stolen. So she wants restitution. She wants names. Whose? She said one of the families still controls Verdant Crown. Which family? Ethan opened his eyes again. Yours. The flight to Montreal took less than an hour. The sky darkened as we approached. From the air, the city lights spread around the mountain and along the river. Montreal police met us at the airport. The deposit box was held beneath a private fiduciary office in Old Montreal inside a former bank building on Saint-Jacques Street. The institution was not a conventional bank. It served trusts, family offices, diplomatic clients, and estates requiring discretion. Its chief legal officer waited at the entrance with armed security. He looked exhausted. "Mr. Calder," he said, "Mrs. Vale." "Has anyone accessed the box?" Thomas asked. "No." "Attempted?" "Yes." "Who?" "Mr. Graham Vale appeared in person at 3:05. So he was in Montreal. What did he present? Daniel asked. Marwood corporate resolutions, the Ontario guardianship order, and identification naming him as replacement protector. The guardianship is suspended. We received the order 20 minutes ago. Where is Graham now? He left after we refused access. Was he alone? The legal officer hesitated. He was accompanied by a woman. Alana Weiss, Park asked. He introduced her as Claire Bennett. Of course. Enemies when useful. Partners when necessary. We entered the vault level through biometric security. The deposit box was not a metal drawer. It was a private room behind a circular steel door. The brass key opened the first mechanical lock. Thomas's protector credential opened the second. My identity and live signature opened the third. But we no longer had the key. The legal officer said there was an emergency drilling procedure. It required approval from both recognized parties and police observation. The process took 40 minutes. When the steel door finally opened, cold air moved from the room. Inside stood a single table. On it rested a cedar box, a document tube, and a sealed envelope addressed in Robert's handwriting. Evelyn. No legal title. No instruction. Only my name. I broke the seal. The first line read, "If you are reading this, someone in our family has chosen the money over the truth." My hand stopped. Thomas looked away. I continued. Robert explained that Verdant Crown began during the Second World War as a network for moving assets out of occupied Europe. Some transfers saved lives. Others exploited desperate families. After the war, the network evolved into an alliance of banks, law firms, industrial companies, and private trusts. It hid beneficial ownership, settled claims quietly, bought archives, destroyed provenance records, protected reputations. Robert's father had worked for them. My father had too. The Vale family fortune was not separate from Verdant Crown. It was one of its Canadian branches. Robert discovered the truth while reviewing old company ledgers. He spent decades separating legitimate assets from stolen ones, returning property where ownership could be proved and preserving records where it could not. Ashbourne had been purchased partly to control the tunnel, where the Canadian archive had been hidden. The mansion was not the treasure. It was the lock. The adjoining parcels were not development assets. They controlled every physical entrance. The Conservation Trust was not only philanthropy. It was a mechanism to prevent the land from being consolidated and excavated by Verdant Crown. My anger turned inward. Robert had built our life around a secret and let me believe I was choosing preservation freely. Perhaps I had chosen it. But not with the full truth. The letter continued. Graham's father, my late brother-in-law Charles, had discovered references to the archive years earlier. Charles believed the family had been cheated of its true inheritance. He told Graham. Graham spent his adult life searching for the access structure. Ethan inherited the grievance but not the patience. Patricia had known nothing. Then I reached the final paragraph. There is one person you must not trust merely because she reveals the fraud. Alana Weiss has a legitimate claim, but grief has made her useful to dangerous people. She believes the archive will restore her family's history. Verdant Crown believes she will lead them to it. Both are correct. Beneath the letter was a map of Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Robert's burial plot was marked. Inside the cedar box lay a second key. Not for the cemetery vault. For the metal case recovered beneath Ashbourne. Detective Park called Toronto. The case was transported to a secure police facility. Under our instruction, Nora used the key. Inside were corporate ledgers, wartime correspondence, and a series of modern payment records. The modern records showed transfers from Verdant Crown to Graham, to Richard Hollis, to Martin Grant, to Leonard Shaw, and to Claire Bennett. But Elena's payments were different. She had received money from Verdant Crown, then transferred the same amounts to survivor restitution organizations. She was not working for them for profit. She was using their money to fund the search. At the bottom of the cedar box lay a photograph. Robert stood beside a much younger Thomas. Beside them was a third man, Charles Vale, Graham's father. On the back, Robert had written, "The three of us agreed the archive would never belong to one family again." I handed the photograph to Thomas. "You told me Charles knew only fragments." Thomas stared at it. He was part of the protection agreement. Then why did he tell Graham the inheritance was stolen? Because he changed his mind. When? After he learned the value of the claims. You knew. I knew he wanted the documents monetized. Did Robert push him out of the company? Yes. So Ethan's accusation at the gate contained a piece of truth. Not the truth he believed, but enough to nourish resentment for years. Daniel opened the document tube. Inside was an original deed, the corrective land instrument, and instructions for the burial vault. The instructions required my physical presence. Again. Robert had designed every safeguard around me while keeping me ignorant of what I was safeguarding. Then the vault alarm sounded. The steel door behind us closed halfway and stopped. Security lights turned red. A voice came through the ceiling speaker. "Graham, you always arrive exactly where Robert wanted you." Detective Park drew her weapon. Police outside shouted. Then the lights failed. A second voice joined Graham's. "Elena." "I'm sorry, Evelyn." Gas began hissing through the ventilation grate. Thomas moved toward the door. It would not open. Daniel covered his mouth with his sleeve. Rachel struck the emergency panel. Nothing. Graham spoke again. The Montreal box was never the objective. I looked at Robert's cemetery map. Mount Pleasant. The instructions. The second archive. He had guided us here while another team moved in Toronto. "They're opening the grave," I said. Elena answered through the speaker. "No." Her voice trembled for the first time. "They already did." Then she said the words that changed everything. "Robert's coffin is empty." The gas reached us before the meaning did. It smelled faintly sweet. Not smoke. Not natural gas. Something chemical and deliberate. Detective Park pulled her jacket over her mouth and shouted toward the half-closed steel door. "Get it open." 2 Montreal officers on the other side forced their fingers into the gap. The door moved less than a centimeter. The ventilation hiss grew louder. Thomas stumbled against the table. Rachel caught him. Daniel dropped to one knee. I pressed Robert's letter against my face and tried not to breathe. Then Elena's voice came through the speaker again. "Break the lower grate." Park looked toward the wall. A brass ventilation panel sat near the floor beneath the deposit boxes. "Why should we trust you?" she shouted. "Because Graham changed the mixture." "What mixture?" "It was supposed to sedate you." Thomas coughed. "What did he use?" "I don't know." Park fired twice into the grate. Metal buckled inward. One officer kicked through it, exposing a narrow maintenance shaft. Fresh air rushed through. Not enough. But enough to slow the dizziness. Rachel crawled toward the opening first. Then Daniel. Thomas resisted. "My daughter." "She's ahead of you," I said. Park pushed him toward the shaft. I followed. The passage was barely wider than my shoulders. Dust coated my hands and face. Pipes ran along one side, forcing us to crawl on our elbows. Behind us, the hissing stopped. Then Graham's voice returned. "You always were difficult to contain, Aunt Evelyn." I turned my head toward the speaker in the vault. "Where is Robert?" No answer. "Is he alive?" The silence lasted too long. Then Graham laughed softly. "That depends on what you mean by alive." Detective Park grabbed my ankle. "Move." We reached a service chamber beyond the vault wall. The air was cleaner. Rachel vomited beside a drain. Thomas collapsed next to her, still trying to speak. Daniel lay on his back with his eyes closed. Park checked his pulse. Strong. One of the Montreal officers called emergency services through a landline mounted on the wall. The building's electronic systems remained offline. No cameras. No elevators. No exterior communications except the old copper emergency circuit. That had been the plan. Disable the modern systems. Leave just enough infrastructure for the trap to remain controlled. A paramedic team reached us through the basement loading corridor 7 minutes later. By then, the building's security director had discovered that the gas had entered only the private vault suite. No other clients were affected. Graham had not wanted public chaos. He wanted us frightened, slowed, and removed from Toronto. Detective Park refused transport. So did I. Thomas and Daniel were taken upstairs for oxygen. Rachel remained with them. Park and I stayed in the service chamber while Montreal police cleared the building. "What did Elena mean?" Park asked. "About the coffin?" "Yes." "I don't know." "You believe Robert could be alive. My husband died in a hospital." You saw the body? Yes. After death? I opened my mouth, then stopped. I saw Robert before the final surgery. I held his hand while the anesthesiologist prepared him. The surgeon came out 4 hours later. Massive cerebral hemorrhage. No recovery. Machines sustained him through the night. I sat beside him until the monitors went silent. Or I believed they went silent. The hospital handled the body. The funeral home handled preparation. The casket remained closed because of surgical trauma. I accepted that explanation. I never demanded to see him again. My husband is dead, I said. Park watched me carefully. That is not the same as answering the question. Yes, he is dead. Then why is the coffin empty? Perhaps the documents were removed. Elena said the coffin itself was empty. She may be lying. She also told us how to escape. She helped build the trap. Park sat beside the damaged ventilation grate. She may be switching sides. Or managing both. The building's chief legal officer entered with 2 detectives from the Service de Police de la Ville de Montréal. One carried a tablet. We recovered partial video from an independent street camera, he said. Mr. Graham Vale left the building at 4:58 p.m. With Elena, Park asked.
No.
He left alone through the east service entrance. Vehicle. A gray Mercedes van with Quebec plates. The plates were stolen. Direction? North toward Côte des Neiges. Mount Royal. And beyond it, the roads toward the airport. Or toward the cemetery. I looked at the time. The cemetery closed to visitors at 5. But work crews could remain. Funeral homes had after-hours access. Martin Grant's company had modified the burial vault. He controlled contractors. He had permits. Mount Pleasant is already compromised, I said. We need Toronto police at Robert's grave now. Park made the call. Toronto units were already there. The cemetery office had reported an unauthorized maintenance crew 40 minutes earlier. The crew presented legitimate paperwork bearing my signature. They claimed the vault had developed drainage problems. By the time cemetery staff verified the request, the workers were gone. The grave had been opened. The outer concrete vault was damaged. The casket was missing. Not empty. Missing. Elena had lied by 1 word. And 1 word changed the problem completely. The coffin had not been found empty. Someone had removed it. Why take the entire casket? Park asked. To preserve what is inside, I said. Documents? Or a body? She looked at me. You still believe he is dead? Yes. Then whose body is in it? I had no answer. 6:42 p.m. a video arrived on my phone. No sender identification. No metadata. A single image. A warehouse interior. Concrete walls. Industrial lights. Robert's mahogany casket rested on a steel table. Beside it stood Graham. He wore no suit jacket now, his sleeves were rolled to his elbows. Elena stood farther back holding the brass key. Between them sat a man tied to a chair. His face was hidden beneath a black hood. Graham looked into the camera. Aunt Evelyn, you now understand that the house, the archive, and the family trust were all parts of one system. He placed one hand on the casket lid. Robert believed he could control the truth after death. He was wrong. Elena remained motionless. Graham continued. You have 2 hours to deliver the Montreal documents and the corrective deed to the address that will follow. Thomas must transfer beneficial control of Marwood to me without challenge. Already done, Park said quietly, or so he claimed. He wants it insulated, I replied. No later challenge, no duress argument. Graham gestured toward the hooded man. And you will bring Detective Park, no tactical team, no tracking devices, no substitutions. He pulled the hood away. Ethan. His hospital gown had been replaced with dark clothing. An intravenous line remained taped to his hand. His face was swollen. His mouth was bleeding. He looked at the camera. Don't do it. Graham struck him across the face. Not hard. Deliberate. Your nephew has become inconvenient, Graham said, but he remains useful. Ethan lifted his head again. Tell her about the buyer. Graham struck him a second time. Elena turned away. The motion was small, but it was the first sign that she and Graham were no longer aligned. Graham smiled. The buyer is waiting. The video ended. The address arrived seconds later. An industrial property in Laval. A former pharmaceutical distribution warehouse near Autoroute 440. Montreal police searched ownership records. The building belonged to a numbered company. The beneficial owner was hidden behind a trust in Liechtenstein. But 6 years earlier, the warehouse had been leased by a storage subsidiary connected to Verdant Crown. Park placed the phone on the table. This is a controlled exchange. Yes. He wants us to bring the documents. Yes. He expects police despite what he said. Yes. What is his exit? I thought about the warehouse. Pharmaceutical distribution. Loading bays. Cold storage. Hazardous material permits. Possible tunnels or drainage access. And a casket. He does not need an exit, I said. Why? He believes the documents are more valuable than his freedom. People say that until handcuffs appear. Graham has spent 11 years preparing this. He sacrificed Ethan, Richard, Leonard, Martin, and possibly Elena. He will not surrender the archive because a building is surrounded. Parks stood. We need the Montreal box contents copied and secured. They already photographed everything during the drill process. The originals matter in court. They matter more to Graham because they authenticate what Robert hid. And you are considering bringing them? Yes. No. He has Ethan. Ethan is a co-conspirator. He is also a hostage. And Graham may kill him even if we comply. I know. Park's expression hardened. This cannot become a family negotiation. It stopped being one when armed men entered my house. It is now a police operation. And I am the person Graham needs. That makes you an asset we protect, not a commander. I looked at the table where Robert's letter had rested. For 46 years, men had protected me by withholding information. Robert protected me from the archive. Thomas protected me from Robert's suspicions. Daniel protected me from legal risk. Graham protected me from myself. Every version of protection ended with someone else controlling the decision. No, I said. Park's eyes narrowed. No what? I will not remain in a safe room while you negotiate with people who built the trap around my name. You will follow operational direction. I will follow lawful instruction. I will not disappear from my own case. She stared at me, then nodded once. Fine, you participate under my control. Agreed. You wear protective equipment. Agreed. You do not improvise. I said nothing. She pointed at me. That silence is not agreement. It is the most I can promise. By 7:30, the Laval warehouse was under surveillance. Drones found 3 vehicles inside the loading yard. Thermal imaging suggested at least 6 people in the building. 1 heat source remained stationary in the central storage room. Ethan. 2 moved along the roofline. Lookouts. 1 occupied an office near the east loading dock. Possibly Graham. Another moved between the office and central room. Elena. The last figure stayed near the refrigeration section. Unknown. Montreal tactical officers prepared entry teams at 3 points. A bomb squad examined building plans. The warehouse had a backup generator and an independent ventilation system. It also had old pharmaceutical waste incineration equipment, legally decommissioned but still structurally intact. Enough heat to destroy paper, digital drives, and human remains. Graham had chosen the location carefully. At 8:06, Thomas received a message. Transfer Marwood before our arrival. Attached was a document package. A shareholder resolution. A trust amendment. An indemnity agreement. A waiver of duress claims. The signatures required were Thomas's and Rachel's. The documents were sophisticated. Not Graham's work. Martin Grant had likely prepared them before his arrest. Daniel reviewed the language from the hospital. Do not sign. Thomas looked at Rachel. She had recovered enough to join us at the command post. My grandson is safe, he asked Park. Toronto officers located him at his university residence. He was never abducted. Rachel closed her eyes. Elena had told the truth about that. The kidnapping video was staged. But Rachel had signed under the belief it was real. That was enough to invalidate the corporate transfer. Graham knew it. He needed clean signatures now. We should send altered documents, Daniel said through the secure line, visually identical but legally defective. Park agreed. Thomas and Rachel signed copies containing a subtle inconsistency in the corporate number and an impossible effective date. Forensic watermark identified every page. We transmitted them. Graham responded within 3 minutes. He had found the defect. Correct page 17. Thomas looked at Daniel. He read everything. Or Elena did, Daniel replied. She had built the forged instruments. She understood legal structures. She had also chosen to help us escape. What does Elena want now? I asked. No one answered. So I called her. Not the number Claire used. A number Ethan had whispered to Detective Dufresne at the hospital. It rang once. Then connected. No greeting. Only breathing. Elena, I said. You should not come. Then release Ethan. I cannot. Cannot or will not. Graham has the detonator. For what? The casket. My stomach tightened. Explain. Pressure charges around the lid. If anyone opens it incorrectly, the contents burn. Why? Robert designed it. Robert placed explosives in his own coffin. Not explosives, an incendiary protection system. Inside a burial vault. He expected someone to try. That sounded like him. Too much like him. What is in the casket? I asked. The second archive. And Robert? Silence. Was he buried? Yes. Is his body there? I don't know. You saw the casket opened? No. You said it was empty. I said what Graham told me to say. Why help us escape the vault? Because the gas was supposed to be nitrous oxide. He changed it. Yes. To what? A veterinary anesthetic concentrate, too high a dose. He intended to kill us. He intended to make Thomas sign while disoriented. He did not care if the rest of you survived. Yet you stayed with him. I needed access to the casket. For your family records? For proof. Proof of what? That my grandfather was not a thief. The Weiss name appeared in the preliminary inventory. A European banking family. Assets transferred through wartime intermediaries. Some saved. Some stolen. What do the records say? That he signed over the family companies voluntarily in 1941. Did he? He signed because his children were being held. Elena. Her breathing changed. I found letters in the Ashbourne chamber. Robert had them. He knew the transfer was coerced. He never returned the assets. Why? I don't know. Then you do not know he stole them. I know your family kept them. Robert spent decades separating legitimate assets and restitution claims. Quietly, privately, without accountability. That does not make Graham right. No. Does Graham know you helped us? He suspects. Where is he now? I cannot tell you. He will kill Ethan. He may. He will kill you after he gets the documents. I know. Then stop protecting the operation. I am not protecting it. What are you protecting? Her voice lowered. The person in the refrigeration room. The unknown sixth heat source. Who is it? A man Graham brought from Toronto. Name. I do not know his real name. What does he look like? Late 70s, maybe 80, tall, white hair, surgical scar behind the right ear. I stopped breathing. Robert had a surgical scar behind his right ear. From an operation in his 30s. A benign tumor. The scar curved toward the base of his skull. Only a few people knew. Send me a photograph. I cannot. Then describe his eyes. This is not the time. Describe them. A pause. Gray, one pupil is slightly larger. Robert's left pupil had been enlarged since childhood after a hockey injury. My hand began to shake. Park saw it. She moved closer but did not interrupt. What name does Graham use for him? I asked. Mr. Ash. Ashbourne. Ash. A private name. A joke Robert might have chosen. Is he conscious? Sometimes. Does he speak? Very little. What does he say? Your name. The command post blurred around me. For 8 years I had believed my husband dead. I had grieved him, buried him, changed my life around his absence. Now a woman who had lied repeatedly was telling me a man matching his scars and eyes sat in a refrigeration room in Laval. It was impossible. But impossible had become crowded. Why would Graham bring him, I asked. To open the casket. The casket has a protection system. Robert can disable it. Then why does Graham need me? The casket has 2 locks. Of course. Robert never trusted a single key. What are the 2 authorities? The legal beneficiary. Me. And the originator. Robert. Elena whispered, yes. The call ended. Park took the phone from my hand. You are not going inside. I am. That information is unverified. His scar. Could be in medical records. The pupil? Family photographs. The name Ash. Manipulation. Yes, I said, but manipulation works best when attached to truth. The tactical commander approached. We have a change. A drone image showed movement at the west loading bay. A refrigerated truck was backing toward the building. Its rear doors opened. 2 armed men moved the casket onto a hydraulic platform. They're relocating it, Park said. Or preparing to burn it. The commander pointed to the incineration section on the plan. The internal route from the loading bay leads directly to the decommissioned waste furnace. Graham's deadline had not expired. He was accelerating. Why? Because Elena's call had exposed him. Or because he had received the Marwood documents and rejected them. Or because he knew police were close. The commander gave the order. Entry teams moved. The west team breached first. The loading bay doors exploded inward. The armed men abandoned the casket and fired from behind the truck. Police returned fire. 1 man fell. The other ran toward the furnace corridor. The north team entered through the roof access. The east team cut through a sidewall. Park and I traveled in an armored vehicle toward the command point near the warehouse entrance. I wore a ballistic vest beneath a police jacket. The Montreal box documents remained secured elsewhere. We carried copies in a fireproof case. Enough to look real. Not enough to surrender the originals. Gunfire echoed from inside. Then the building lights went out. A red glow appeared behind the high windows. Fire. The warehouse alarm began to sound. Park received rapid updates. Central room secured, hostage missing. Office, empty. 2 suspects moving toward refrigeration. Possible incendiary device active. The west loading door opened. Ethan staggered out with his hands raised. Blood covered one side of his face. An officer pulled him behind cover. Park ran to him. Where is Graham? Cold room. Elena. With him. The older man. Ethan looked at me. You know. Is it Robert? I don't know. You saw him. Yes. Is it my husband? He looks like the photographs. That is not what I asked. He called you Evie. No one called me that except Robert. Not since he died. The warehouse shook. A low explosion rolled through the floor. Smoke burst from the roof vents. Park ordered medical officers to take Ethan away. He grabbed my sleeve. Graham opened part of the casket. What was inside? Files. And? A body. My heart stopped. Whose body? I couldn't see the face. Was the older man in the room? Yes. Then the body is not Robert. Unless the older man isn't Robert. He released me. Park drew her weapon. We go to the cold room entrance and no farther. The tactical team had secured the main corridor. Sprinklers rained over broken glass and shelving. Smoke moved along the ceiling. The refrigeration wing stood behind insulated steel doors. One had been forced open. Inside, the air was painfully cold. The first chamber contained empty pharmaceutical racks. The second held medical equipment. Not old equipment. Modern monitors. Infusion pumps. Oxygen. A hospital bed. The sheets were still warm. A leather restraint hung from one rail. Someone had been kept there for a long time. Maybe weeks. Maybe longer. Park found prescription vials in a locked cabinet. The patient name read Ash Robert. I touched the label. It had been printed 2 months earlier. Not 8 years. Park photographed everything. Then a voice came through the next room. Evie. Weak. Rough. But unmistakable. I moved toward it. Park blocked me. Wait. Evie. No recording could reproduce the small break in the second syllable. Robert always used it when he was afraid. I pushed past Park. The final cold room had been converted into a surgical workspace. Graham stood beside the casket. The lid was open by 10 centimeters. Metal locking rods prevented it from opening farther. A control device sat on top. Elena held a pistol near the wall. Her weapon was aimed at Graham. Graham's weapon was aimed at the old man seated in a wheelchair between them. He was thinner than Robert. His face had collapsed around the cheekbones. White hair fell across his forehead. A scar curved behind his right ear. His left pupil was larger than the right. He looked at me. And I knew. Not from the scars. Not from the eyes. From the way he pressed his thumb against the side of his index finger. A habit he had when suppressing pain. Robert. Alive. I could not move. He smiled. Barely. Hello, Evie. Everything I had prepared to say over 8 years disappeared. Only one word remained. How? Graham laughed. A family reunion. Elena tightened her grip. Put the gun down. Graham ignored her. Robert's voice was weak. Do not open the casket. What is inside? I asked. Charles. My late brother-in-law. Graham's father. The casket contained Charles's body, not Robert's. Patricia's husband had died 17 years earlier in what we were told was a boating accident. His body had never been recovered. Now it lay inside Robert's grave. I looked at Graham. You buried your father under Robert's name. Robert did. Robert closed his eyes. I had no choice. There is always a choice. Not then. Graham pressed the gun to Robert's temple. Tell her the rest. Robert looked at me. Charles tried to sell the archive. To Verdant Crown? To several buyers. What happened? He came to Ashbourne with a weapon. Thomas and I confronted him in the tunnel. You killed him. No. Graham's voice sharpened. Say it. Robert opened his eyes. Thomas shot him. Thomas had protected the archive, then helped bury Charles's body in a casket carrying Robert's name years later. The timeline did not make sense. Charles died 17 years ago. Robert died 8 years ago. How did Charles's body remain hidden for 9 years? In the sealed chamber, Robert said. We preserved it because the death could not be explained without exposing the archive. You hid a body beneath our home. Yes. And when you supposedly died, I changed the burial. Why? Because Verdant Crown had found the chamber. The grave was safer. You moved Charles into your own coffin. Yes. And where did you go? Robert's eyes filled. I disappeared. The words were small. The injury was not. You let me believe you were dead. I was dying. You are sitting in front of me. I had a cerebral hemorrhage. The prognosis was weeks, perhaps months. Thomas arranged private care. For 8 years, I survived. And never called. I could not. Could not speak. For a time. Could not write. My condition fluctuated. Could not send one message through Thomas? Robert looked at the floor. Graham smiled. He could. I felt something inside me harden. Why didn't you? Robert's hand trembled. Because I learned Graham was still watching you. So you protected me by abandoning me. I protected the archive. There it was. Not me. Not our marriage. The archive. The truth he valued more than the person who had shared his life. Graham pulled Robert's wheelchair closer to the casket. He knows the sequence. What sequence? Park asked. The locking system, Elena said. Robert and Evelyn must enter matching codes. And if they do not? Graham held up a small transmitter. The casket burns, Charles's body burns, the files burn, Robert burns. You will burn too, Park said. The cold room is isolated. Police control the building. Police control the corridors. I control the ventilation and suppression systems. Elena looked toward me. He has a secondary exit through the pharmaceutical waste conduit. Park spoke into her radio. Seal the south waste line. Graham's expression changed. Elena had betrayed the route. He fired at her. She moved first. The bullet struck her shoulder. Her shot hit Graham in the thigh. He fell behind the casket. Park fired toward his weapon hand. The gun slid across the floor. But the transmitter remained in his other hand. His thumb pressed the button. The control device on the casket began counting down. Zo two-eyed daughter. Red numbers. Robert tried to stand and collapsed. Elena, he said, the left seal. She crawled toward the casket, blood spreading through her jacket. There are 4 ports. Second from the rear. I moved beside her. The casket lid contained a concealed steel panel, 2 key slots, 2 numeric pads, 1 biometric plate, and 4 recessed seals. Robert pointed weakly. The beneficiary code first. I don't know it. Yes, you do. What is it? The third thing we saved. I stared at him. The white pine forest. The exploration data. The third thing. Years after those, Robert and I acquired a textile company in Quebec that planned to close a factory and sell the land. The factory was unprofitable. The pension plan was underfunded. 200 families depended on it. We sold the land but kept the operation alive by moving production and converting part of the business. The third thing we saved was not the company. It was the pensions. What phrase? I asked. Robert's eyes stayed on mine. You said it at the board meeting. I remembered. No fortune is clean if the workers pay for it. I entered the phrase as numbers using the old telephone keypad conversion Robert favored. The first lock turned green. 0123. Originator code, Elena said. Robert reached toward the second pad. His fingers shook too badly. Graham dragged himself along the floor. Park aimed at him. Do not move. He laughed through clenched teeth. You still think this opens something. Robert entered 6 digits. The second lock turned green. 0058. The biometric plate lit. 2 signatures required. I pressed my hand to one side. Robert pressed his to the other. Nothing happened. Blood flow too weak, Elena said. Robert's skin was cold. His pulse barely registered. The system could not verify him. 042. Graham smiled. He was never expected to live this long. I looked at the casket. At Charles inside. At the archive. At the man I had mourned and the man who had chosen not to return. Robert whispered, the seal. Elena pushed the brass key into the second recessed port. It did not turn. Wrong key, she said. The Montreal key opens the archive, Robert replied. The Ashbourne seal disables the burn cycle. The blue leather box. The original Vailland Corporation seal. Graham had ordered Patricia to retrieve it. He needed it because it was not only an authentication tool. It was the mechanical override. The box remained at Ashbourne. Nora had it. 029. Park spoke into her radio. Toronto, locate the blue box now. No response could solve the distance. Graham raised the transmitter. You lose either way. I looked at the 4 seal ports. Robert had designed them to accept the corporate seal. But seals leave impressions. Shapes. The Vailland Corporation emblem appeared on the corrective deed inside the fireproof case we brought. A maple leaf inside a circle. Raised border. 3 notches. I removed the deed. The embossed seal pressed into the paper created a negative pattern. Not metal. Not strong. But perhaps enough to align the internal pins. I folded the document around the impression until the shape thickened. Then forced it into the port. 0017. The paper tore. The first notch caught. The second did not. Elena pushed her thumb over the center. I twisted. The mechanism resisted. 009. Robert placed his hand over mine. Together, we turned. The seal port clicked. The countdown stopped at 03. For 1 second, no one moved. Then every locking rod inside the casket withdrew. The lid opened. Cold air rolled out. Charles Vale lay inside, preserved in a sealed inner container. A dark mark remained near his chest. A gunshot. Around his body were document cases, ledgers, and metal cylinders. The second archive. Proof of stolen assets. Proof of restitution attempts. Proof of Verdant Crown's modern network. And proof that Thomas had killed Charles. Graham stared into the casket. His face changed completely. The polished banker disappeared. The patient strategist disappeared. Only a son remained. You left him in a tunnel, he whispered. Robert looked at him. He was going to kill Thomas. You chose Thomas. I chose to stop your father. You buried him under your own name. To protect you. Graham laughed. It sounded like Ethan at the gate. Bitter. Disbelieving. You erased him. No, I hid the evidence until the archive could be released safely. You hid him because his death made you a criminal. Yes. The admission silenced the room. Robert did not justify it. Did not transform it into necessity. He simply said yes. Graham's eyes moved toward me. This is your family. I looked at Charles's body. At Robert. At Elena bleeding beside the casket. At Park holding the gun. At Graham on the floor. No, I said, this is what happens when a family mistakes secrecy for loyalty. Graham reached inside his jacket. Park fired. The bullet struck his shoulder and spun him backward. A second transmitter fell from his hand. Not for the casket. For the warehouse furnace. A warning alarm began to pulse. Elena looked toward the ceiling. He started the incinerator purge. The waste system roared to life behind the walls. Heat moved through the lower vents. Smoke thickened in the corridor. Tactical officers entered the cold room. They secured Graham. Others lifted Robert from the wheelchair. Park ordered the archive removed. Every case required 2 people. The preserved body could not be moved quickly. I stood beside the casket. We are not leaving Charles. The room may ignite, Park said. He has been hidden for 17 years. This is not the moment for symbolism. It is evidence. So are the files. Robert gripped my arm. Evie, leave him. I pulled away. You made that decision once. His face collapsed. The tactical commander entered. Structural temperature rising. We have 90 seconds. Officers locked the inner body container and attached lifting straps. 4 people carried it. The remaining archive cases went onto a wheeled pharmaceutical cart. Graham was dragged into the corridor. Elena tried to walk and nearly fell. I caught her. She looked at me with disbelief. You forged my signature, I said. You do not get to die before explaining every page. We reached the loading bay as flames broke through the refrigeration wing. The casket emerged last, its mahogany exterior blackened by smoke. Police vehicles moved us beyond the blast perimeter. Minutes later, the warehouse roof collapsed over the cold rooms. The fire consumed the equipment. Not the archive. Not Charles. Not Robert. At 2:11 in the morning, I sat in a private hospital room in Montreal. Robert lay in the bed. Doctors had stabilized him. Severe malnutrition. Cardiac weakness. Neurological damage. Long-term sedative exposure. He had not been free during the past 8 years. Not entirely. Thomas placed him in private care after the staged death. For the first 2 years, Robert remained largely unresponsive. When he improved, Thomas planned to tell me. Then Graham located the facility. He threatened to expose Charles's death, the hidden burial, and the archive unless Robert remained hidden. Robert agreed. Later, Graham moved him between private clinics. By the time Thomas realized Robert was missing, he believed Verdant Crown had killed him. Thomas said nothing to me because disclosure would reveal everything. Again, protection through silence. Again, a man deciding what truth I could survive. Robert opened his eyes. I sat beside him but did not take his hand. You could have found a way, I said. I tried. How many times? 3. What happened? Messages intercepted. By Graham? Yes. Did you ever contact Nora? No. Daniel? No. Police? No. Me directly? He looked away. No. So you did not try to reach me, you tried to reach people around me. I was afraid communications were watched. You knew my routines, you knew where I walked, which charities I visited, which meetings I attended. I was weak. For 8 years. For some of them. And the others. His eyes filled. I was ashamed. That answer, at least, was human. Not strategic. Not legal. Not protective. Ashamed. You let shame become my grief, I said. I know. You let me bury someone else. I know. You let Patricia mourn a husband without a body while his body lay in your grave. I know. You allowed Ethan and Graham to grow up believing Charles was cheated and erased. I did not know what Charles told them. You knew enough. Yes. I stood. Robert reached for me. His hand stopped before touching my sleeve. Will you come back? I looked at the man I had loved. The man I had mourned. The man who had built traps beneath our home and inside our marriage. I do not know. For the first time, I allowed uncertainty to belong to me. Outside the hospital room, Detective Park waited with an update. Graham was in surgery under police guard. He would survive. Elena had also survived. Martin Grant, Richard Hollis, Leonard Shaw, Melanie Price, and the armed warehouse team faced multiple charges. Ethan had been returned to hospital custody. The guardianship order was permanently vacated. The Ashbourne transfer was frozen. Marwood's governance changes were suspended. The conservation land transfer had been flagged for reversal. On paper, the fraud was collapsing. But the archive created a larger crisis. Federal authorities had become involved. So had international restitution organizations. Banks named in the records were already retaining counsel. Families in Canada and Europe would make claims. Governments would demand access. Verdant Crown's remaining members would try to discredit everything. What about my house? I asked. Protected for now, Park said. For now? The title court wants a complete ownership history. The Marwood structure, the false parcel, and the archive access rights complicate matters. Does Verdant Crown still claim the purchase agreement? The company's lawyers say the buyer was unaware of fraud. They funded armed men. That has not yet been proved against the legal purchaser. The payment records connect them. They connect intermediaries. Of course. Layers. Always layers. What does the judge require? An original chain of title and the authentic corporate seal. The corrective deed existed. The original seal remained in the blue leather box at Ashbourne. Nora had secured it. That is enough, I said. Park hesitated. What? The box is gone. I stared at her. Gone where? Nora opened the secured room after your call from the warehouse. The blue box had been replaced. Replaced with what? A replica. The seal inside was false. The original had been removed before the mansion lockdown. Someone had known about it. Someone with access to Robert's dressing room. Not Ethan. He asked Patricia to retrieve it because he believed it remained there. Not Graham. He still needed the seal during the call. Someone else took it earlier. Someone who understood the casket override. Someone who knew the title court would eventually demand it. Thomas, I said. Park shook her head. He is under observation. Rachel? At the hospital. Daniel? He never returned to Ashbourne. Nora? Park said nothing. The silence felt worse than an accusation. Nora called me when Claire first contacted the office, I said. She froze the accounts, she secured the house, she found the companies. She also knew every code, document, location, meeting, trust, contact, and security response. She has worked with me for 12 years. Which gave her access Graham spent 11 years trying to obtain. No. I am not saying she is involved. You are thinking it. I am saying the box disappeared from a room only 4 people could open. Who? You, Robert, Nora, and the head of household security. Where is the security chief? Missing. His name was Michael Reeve. Former military police. Employed at Ashbourne for 6 years. He controlled the electronic access logs. He had reported Ethan at the gate. He had found the surveillance devices. He had coordinated the lockdown. And no one had seen him since the tunnel breach. Park handed me a photograph recovered from Graham's warehouse office. It showed Michael Reeve meeting Elena outside a Toronto hotel 3 months earlier. On the back, someone had written, "Delivery after activation." The fraud had not been designed to end with Graham. He was one branch. Elena was another. Michael was a third. And somewhere between them sat the original corporate seal, the object that could validate or destroy the title claim to Ashbourne. My phone rang. Nora. I answered immediately. Where are you? At the house. Is Michael there? No. Did you take the blue box? No. Who did? Her breathing was uneven. I found the security footage. What footage? Robert's dressing room 3 nights ago. Who entered? You did. I gripped the phone. I was not in the dressing room 3 nights ago. I know. Then who was it? The person looked like you from behind, same coat, same height, same hair. Face? She avoided the cameras. Elena? No. Who? Nora's voice dropped. Patricia. My sister. The woman who said she believed Ethan and Graham were preparing a family intervention. The woman who came to my gate sedated. The woman who helped police call Graham. The woman whose husband lay inside Robert's coffin. She took the box, I asked. Yes. Where is she now? She left the police station in Toronto 20 minutes ago. How? She was not under arrest. Did anyone follow her? They lost the vehicle near the Don Valley Parkway. I looked through the hospital glass at Robert. Charles's death had changed Patricia's life. His disappearance had shaped Ethan. The archive had swallowed all of them. Call her, I said. I did. No answer. Then a message appeared on my screen. A photograph of the original Vail Land Corporation seal. It rested on a wooden table beside a passport and an airline ticket. Toronto to London. Departure in 3 hours. The message beneath it came from Patricia. I know what they did to Charles. This house was bought with his blood. Now I am taking back what belongs to my son. Patricia's flight did not exist. The ticket in the photograph looked authentic. Airline logo, booking reference, departure time, seat assignment. But Nora checked the reservation through the airline's security liaison. No passenger named Patricia Vail was booked to London. The passport was real. The destination was not. She wants us to think she's leaving Canada, Detective Park said. Or someone wants us chasing the wrong airport. I enlarged the photograph. The seal rested on a walnut table scarred near one edge. Beside it lay Patricia's burgundy passport and the printed ticket. A silver teaspoon appeared in the upper right corner. The handle bore a small engraved pine cone. I knew that spoon. It belonged to the tea service at our Muskoka cottage. The cottage Ethan had used to secure the fraudulent $18 million credit line. She's not in Toronto, I said. She's at Lake Rosso. Park was already calling Ontario Provincial Police. The cottage sat on a narrow peninsula west of Port Carling. In summer, boats crossed the water constantly. In late autumn, the lake became quiet enough that a private aircraft or helicopter could arrive unnoticed. A road led to the property, but the final 8 kilometers wound through dense forest. There was also an old boathouse. And beneath it, a winter storage tunnel Robert had built into the granite shoreline. Another hidden route. Another structure I had accepted without asking enough questions. Why would she go there, Park asked. Charles proposed to her at that cottage. Sentimental? Strategic. Patricia always believed part of the property belonged to him. Did it? No, Robert and I bought it after Charles sold his company shares. But she doesn't believe that. She believes whatever makes her loss someone else's fault. The words sounded cruel. They were also true. Patricia had spent 17 years mourning a husband whose body was never found. During that time, Robert and Thomas knew where he was. I understood why grief had made her vulnerable to Graham. I did not understand stealing the seal. Not yet. Nora remained on the phone. There's another problem. What? The title court moved the hearing forward. To when? 30 minutes from now. Why? Verdant Crown filed evidence that the original corporate seal has been located outside your control. Of course they had. Patricia had not merely taken it. She had announced that she had it. They say the seal proves the corrective deed was fabricated after the purchase agreement, Nora continued. How? They submitted a forensic opinion claiming the impression on the corrective deed does not match the original seal. Who prepared the opinion? An expert in London. Based on what sample? A high-resolution scan sent by Patricia. Park looked at me. She's cooperating with Verdant Crown. Or she thinks she is negotiating with them. The difference mattered. A conspirator understood the structure. Patricia understood emotion. Graham had told her that I cut Ethan out of my will. He had told her Charles's inheritance had been stolen. Now she knew Charles's body had been hidden for 17 years. Someone would offer her a simple story. Robert murdered Charles. I concealed it. Ashbourne was purchased with stolen family money. The seal would restore what belonged to Ethan. Simple stories are powerful because they remove the burden of doubt. Can you appear remotely? Park asked. Yes. Then we handle the court first. OPP handles the cottage. No. You cannot reach Muskoka before the hearing. I know. Then what are you objecting to? Do not send officers onto the property without understanding the boathouse tunnel. Describe it. I cannot. I have only seen the entrance once. Where does it lead? From the lower boathouse to a storage chamber beneath the western lawn. Any weapons? Not when I last saw it. When was that? 22 years ago. Park closed her eyes briefly. Anything else buried under your properties? I am learning at the same speed you are. We joined the emergency title hearing from a secured conference room at the Montreal hospital. Justice Sloan appeared tired and angry. Verdant Crown's counsel argued that the company had paid the full purchase price in good faith based on a court-appointed guardian's authority. Daniel responded that every instrument supporting the transaction arose from fraud. The buyer's lawyer then presented Patricia's affidavit. My sister had signed it electronically 14 minutes earlier. In it, she stated that Robert and I had wrongfully deprived Charles and his descendants of family assets. She said the original Vale Land Corporation seal had been in Charles's possession before his disappearance. She claimed I concealed the seal after his death and created false land records to preserve control of Ashbourne. Most of that was false. One part was possible. Charles may have possessed the seal. The corporation had once belonged jointly to Robert and Charles. If Charles retained the original after selling his shares, Robert's later use of a replacement seal could create questions. Not ownership questions strong enough to justify fraud, but questions strong enough to delay title. Justice Sloan addressed me. Mrs. Vale, where is the original seal? With my sister. Did she take it with your permission? No. Was the seal previously held by Charles Vale? I do not know. Who can answer? I looked through the glass wall toward Robert's hospital room. My husband. Verdant Crown's lawyer objected. Robert Vale is deceased. No, I said, he is not. Silence filled the video conference. Even Justice Sloan did not respond immediately. Daniel rubbed one hand over his face. He had advised me to disclose Robert's survival through a sealed affidavit. There had been no time. Now there was no subtle way to say it. Justice Sloan leaned forward. Mrs. Vale, are you asserting that your husband, whose death was registered 8 years ago, is alive? Yes. Where? In this hospital. Why was a death registered? Because he and others staged it. Daniel spoke quickly. Your Honor, we have medical personnel and law enforcement available to confirm identity. We request that this portion proceed under seal due to an active criminal investigation. Verdant Crown's lawyer called the claim extraordinary. Justice Sloan replied that the entire matter had passed extraordinary several hours earlier. She ordered a private identity examination. A doctor brought Robert into the adjoining room by wheelchair. He looked fragile beneath the hospital blanket. Justice Sloan asked him his full name, date of birth, former addresses, corporate roles, and details from sealed family records. He answered correctly. Daniel produced archived fingerprint records from a federal security clearance Robert held in the 1980s. Montreal police had taken fresh prints. The preliminary match was positive. Then Justice Sloan asked the question that mattered. Mr. Vale, who owned the original corporate seal? Robert looked at me. Then at the camera. Charles Vale. My stomach tightened. Verdant Crown's counsel almost smiled. Robert continued. Charles retained it unlawfully after selling his shares. Did you replace it? Yes. Did you report the original missing? No. Why not? Because reporting it would have forced disclosure of the dispute between us. What dispute? The archive beneath Ashbourne. The judge asked him to explain. Robert did not hide behind confidentiality. Not this time. He described the archive. Charles's attempt to sell it. Thomas shooting Charles in the tunnel. The concealment of the body. The later burial beneath Robert's name. Every sentence created criminal exposure. For Thomas. For Robert. Possibly for me if anyone believed I knew. But the truth also destroyed Patricia's theory that Charles retained ownership in the company. He retained a seal. Not shares. Not title. Not authority. A corporate seal is not ownership, Robert said. It is an authentication instrument. Charles had no legal right to use it after the share sale. Justice Sloan asked whether the corrective deed was genuine. Yes. Which seal was used? The replacement seal authorized by the board. Was the replacement properly recorded? Yes, the resolution is in the sealed corporate register held by the company's auditor. Nora interrupted through counsel. The auditor had located it. Original ink. Original minute book. Independent custody since 9 years earlier. The corrective deed was not fabricated after the sale agreement. It predated it. Verdant Crown's forensic opinion compared the deed against the wrong seal. The original Charles retained was legally obsolete. Justice Sloan ruled from the bench. The purchase agreement could not support immediate transfer. The guardianship authority had been obtained through unreliable evidence. The option over the adjoining parcels included property the seller did not own. Marwood's $1 option had been exercised under disputed governance. All transfers were suspended indefinitely. The purchase funds would remain frozen in trust. No party could deal with Ashbourne, the adjoining lands, the archive, or related corporate assets without further order. Then she looked directly at Robert. Mr. Vale, nothing in this ruling protects you from investigation concerning the false registration of your death or concealment of human remains. I understand. Do you? Yes. I am not convinced anyone in this family understands that private objectives do not displace public law. I almost smiled. Justice Sloan had summarized 46 years of our marriage in one sentence. The hearing ended. Ashbourne was safe from immediate transfer. But Patricia still had the seal. And Ethan's future remained tied to whatever she planned at Muskoka. OPP officers reached the cottage road at 10:18 p.m. They found a fallen spruce blocking the final kilometer. Not a natural fall. The trunk had been cut and pulled across the road with a chain. Thermal imaging from a police helicopter showed 3 heat sources inside the cottage. 1 in the main living room. 2 near the boathouse. A 4th appeared briefly beneath the lawn, then disappeared. The underground chamber. Park and I flew from Montreal to Muskoka aboard an OPP aircraft. Robert remained in hospital under guard. Thomas was arrested before we left. He did not resist. He admitted shooting Charles. He claimed self-defense. The archive and Charles's body were transferred to federal custody. Elena remained hospitalized and under arrest, though investigators acknowledged that she had prevented multiple deaths. Graham survived surgery. He was charged before midnight. His first request was to speak with Patricia. Police refused. Ethan remained under guard. He asked to come to Muskoka. I refused. For once, he accepted an answer without argument. We landed near Muskoka Airport and traveled by armored vehicle toward Lake Rosso. Snow had begun to fall. Not enough to cover the road. Enough to soften the trees and turn the headlights into pale tunnels. The blocked section officers continued on foot. I remained in the command vehicle with Park until the first team reached the cottage perimeter. The main house lights were on. Curtains open. Patricia sat at the long dining table. The corporate seal rested in front of her. She appeared alone. A laptop screen illuminated her face. Park used a directional microphone. A man's voice came through the computer. Not Graham. Not Martin. Not Richard. An older voice with a European accent. Once the seal is delivered, the trust will release the funds. Patricia answered. How much goes to Ethan? 50 million Canadian dollars. And the charges? Our counsel will address them. You said they would disappear. We said he would receive assistance. Patricia's shoulders tightened. Graham had promised Ethan 20 million. This man promised 50. The number grew because the promise had never been real. Who are you? Patricia asked. A representative of the purchaser. Verdant Crown. Yes. Did you order Graham to kill Ethan? No. Did Graham order Leonard to drug me? Family conflicts were handled locally. Patricia stared at the screen. You knew. We knew Mr. Graham Vale was attempting to secure lawful authority. Lawful. He assured us the documentation would withstand review. It was forged. That was not our instruction. Every layer denied the layer beneath it. The representative blamed Graham. Graham blamed Ethan. Ethan blamed Graham and Claire. Claire blamed Verdant Crown. Everyone held one clean hand above the table while the other remained underneath. Patricia picked up the seal. What happens after I give this to your courier? The buyer withdraws the claim against Ashbourne. That was a lie. The title court had already frozen the transaction. The representative had not told her. And Ethan receives the money? Yes. And Charles's name is restored. A pause. We will support a public statement. What statement? That Charles Vale was wrongfully deprived of family property. Was he? The man hesitated. Patricia noticed. For the first time, her voice sharpened. Was my husband cheated? We are not in a position to adjudicate historical family disputes. You told me he was. We relied on information from Graham. Graham lied. We understand emotions are high. Do not speak to me about emotion. She closed the laptop. The audio ended. Park looked at me. She may be reconsidering, or she is forcing them to improve the offer. You think she would still sell? I think grief can change direction without becoming wisdom. Movement appeared near the boathouse. 2 figures emerged from the trees. One was Michael Reeve, my missing security chief. The other wore a heavy winter coat and carried a metal equipment case. The courier. Michael had disabled my gates. He had found the cameras. He had removed the seal. Not for Graham. For the buyer behind Graham. He entered the cottage through the kitchen door. The courier remained outside. Thermal imaging showed the underground heat source moving beneath the lawn toward the boathouse. A 4th person. Park ordered the entry team to hold. We need identification. The directional microphone picked up Michael's voice inside. You should have stayed on the call. Patricia replied, they lied about the court. That changes nothing. The house cannot transfer. The seal has value beyond the house. What value? It authenticates the earliest Vale corporate ledgers. The archive. Not only title. The seal could validate documents showing which assets moved through the Canadian branch of Verdant Crown. With it, families could prove claims. Banks could face liability. Companies could be tied to stolen property. Destroying the seal would damage restitution cases. Controlling it would allow selective authentication. Verdant Crown did not need Ashbourne anymore. It needed the evidence compromised. What are you going to do with it? Patricia asked. Deliver it. To whom? You do not need a name. That is what Graham always said. Michael stepped closer. Graham lost discipline. And you did not. I waited. How long have you worked for them? Before I worked for Evelyn. 6 years inside my house. 6 years learning schedules, codes, rooms, and weaknesses. He did not install the surveillance devices 3 months earlier to begin watching me. He installed them because the operation had entered its final phase. Did you give Ethan the gate credential? Patricia asked. You did. Because Graham asked me. And because you wanted to believe him. Michael's voice remained flat. He did not need to manipulate her now. He only needed the seal. Give it to me. No. The word surprised everyone. Michael reached across the table. Patricia pulled the seal against her chest. You said Ethan would be protected. He was never part of my agreement. You let Graham use him. Yes. You knew they would kill him. I knew it was possible. Patricia stood. Michael blocked the door. She looked smaller than him. Older. Still wearing the same coat from Ashbourne. But her voice did not shake. My son is a thief, she said. He lies. He blames everyone. He believed he deserved what Evelyn built. Michael said nothing. I taught him that. You can discuss parenting after the delivery. No. He moved toward her. Patricia threw the seal into the fireplace. Michael lunged. The object struck the stone hearth, rolled through the flames, and disappeared beneath a burning log. Park ordered the breach. The front windows shattered inward. Officers entered from the north and west. Michael grabbed Patricia and drew a pistol from beneath his jacket. He pulled her against him. Back. Police surrounded the dining room entrances. The courier outside ran toward the boathouse. A tactical team pursued. The underground heat source accelerated beneath the lawn. Then the floor near the fireplace exploded upward. A man emerged through a concealed hatch in the stone. Ethan. He wore hospital clothing beneath a winter jacket. He had escaped custody again. I should have been shocked. Instead, I felt tired. He came through the hatch behind Michael and struck his gun arm with a piece of iron pipe. The pistol fired into the ceiling. Patricia dropped. Officers shot Michael twice. He fell beside the dining table. Ethan raised both hands. Don't shoot. Police forced him to the floor. Patricia crawled toward the fireplace. The seal remained beneath the burning log. She reached for it with a brass poker. I entered through the kitchen after the room was secured. Park tried to stop me. I kept moving. Patricia saw me. Her face crumpled. I didn't know. You knew enough to steal from me. I thought Charles. You chose not to verify anything because anger felt better. She looked toward Ethan on the floor. He said you left him nothing. I left him protection from himself. He wanted control. He always wants control without responsibility. Ethan turned his face toward us. I know. I looked at him. He had said those words once already in the tunnel. This time, he sounded different. Not redeemed. Simply exhausted by his own excuses. How did you get here? Park demanded. Ethan answered from the floor. I left the hospital during a transfer. Graham told me about the Muskoka tunnel years ago. I thought my mother would come here. You entered beneath the lawn? Through the boathouse. Who was the fourth heat source? Me. Why didn't you contact police? I thought Michael would kill her if he saw officers. So you created another armed intervention. I didn't have a gun. You had a metal pipe. It worked. Park looked as though she wanted to arrest him twice. Outside gunfire sounded near the boathouse. Then stopped. The courier was captured at the waterline. He carried the metal case. Inside were acid compounds, document destruction tools, counterfeit seals, and a portable scanner. His identity led to a private intelligence company in London that had worked for Verdant Crown intermediaries for decades. The original seal remained in the fireplace. Patricia pushed aside the burning log. The metal had blackened, but it had not melted. She reached toward it. I caught her wrist. Leave it. It belongs to Charles. No, it belonged to a corporation. He kept it. He stole it. You believe Robert? I believe the corporate records, the auditors, the share sale, and Charles's own signed agreement. Her eyes filled. Robert hid his body. Yes. Thomas killed him. Yes. You knew nothing? Nothing. How can I believe that? You do not have to believe me, you have to examine evidence. I spent 17 years waiting for someone to tell me what happened. And when Graham gave you an answer, you accepted it because it punished me. She looked away. That was the center of it. Not inheritance. Not the mansion. Not even Charles. Patricia wanted me to be guilty because my life had continued after hers stopped. I remained married. I remained wealthy. I remained powerful. She raised Ethan while explaining every failure as the consequence of what our family had taken. Graham used that story. Ethan lived inside it. Now the story had burned down around them. Patricia looked at the seal in the flames. What happens to us? That depends on what you do next. I stole it. Yes. I lied to the court. Yes. I helped them. Yes. She closed her eyes. Will you protect me? There it was again. The family word for concealment. I released her wrist. No. Her eyes opened. I will tell the truth about what Graham did to you. I will tell the truth about Charles. I will not lie for you. She nodded slowly. It hurt her. That was appropriate. Ethan was returned to custody. This time under restraints and medical supervision. Michael survived. The courier cooperated within 48 hours. He provided names, accounts, operational records, and the location of Verdant Crown's European Archive Acquisition Unit. Richard Hollis began negotiating with prosecutors. Martin Grant refused. Leonard blamed everyone. Melanie claimed she had signed documents without reading them. No one believed her. Elena Weiss entered a guilty plea to forgery, conspiracy, kidnapping, unlawful confinement, and several related offenses. Her cooperation exposed the wartime restitution records and the modern network that had financed Graham. At sentencing months later, families whose claims had been buried for generations submitted statements. Some condemned her. Some thanked her. The court did both. It recognized the legitimacy of her family's loss and rejected the crimes she committed in pursuit of proof. Graham survived his injuries. He faced charges for fraud, attempted murder, kidnapping, conspiracy, identity theft, falsification of medical evidence, unlawful transfers, and offenses related to the archive. He continued to insist that he was recovering stolen family wealth. The ledgers proved otherwise. Charles had sold his shares at an independently assessed value. He later discovered the archive and believed he could use it to reclaim influence. He threatened Thomas during the confrontation beneath Ashbourne. Forensic evidence supported Thomas's claim that Charles raised his weapon first. Thomas still pleaded guilty to offenses arising from concealment of the death and obstruction of justice. He did not ask me for forgiveness. That was wise. Patricia pleaded guilty to theft, obstruction, and submitting a false affidavit. She avoided prison due to her cooperation, the manipulation she suffered, and the fact that she ultimately prevented the seal from leaving Canada. She received a conditional sentence and strict financial supervision. For the first time in her adult life, someone other than family controlled the consequences. Ethan accepted a plea agreement covering the forged power of attorney, attempted property fraud, fraudulent financing, and conspiracy. He received a substantial prison sentence. Before sentencing, he wrote to me. The letter contained no request for money. No request for intervention. No claim that Graham forced him. He wrote, I knew the papers were false, I knew you were competent, I knew the house was yours. I told myself I was taking back something stolen because that made me feel less like a thief. I was a thief. I kept the letter. I did not answer it. Not then. The title dispute took 11 months to resolve. Verdant Crown's legal purchaser claimed innocence. Financial records showed that its directors had funded intermediaries connected to the armed operation. The company withdrew its claim after regulators froze its assets in 3 jurisdictions. The full purchase deposit became subject to forfeiture proceedings. Ashbourne remained mine. The real third parcel was registered correctly. The Caledon quarry returned to the entity that had improperly transferred it years earlier, along with its environmental liabilities. The conservation land sale was reversed. The Muskoka credit line was restored after the bank admitted its controls had failed. Northern Dominion paid penalties and compensation. Graham's father-in-law lost his license and his freedom. The archive did not remain under family control. That was my decision. Not Robert's. Not Thomas's. Mine. A court-supervised international commission took custody of the documents. Historians, forensic accountants, provenance researchers, survivor organizations, and government representatives began reviewing the records. Claims would take years. Some assets could never be returned. Some companies would fight. Some families would discover that the fortune they inherited had another family's name buried beneath it. Truth did not repair everything. It established where repair had to begin. Robert returned to Toronto after 3 months in hospital. He did not return to Ashbourne. I arranged a private residence with medical care. Not as punishment. Not as forgiveness. As a boundary. We met several times. He told me everything he could remember. The early Verdant Crown network. His father's role. The first restitution payments. Charles's change of allegiance. The night beneath Ashbourne. The staged death. The years in private care. The moments when he could have contacted me and did not. That last part mattered most. Secrets worth billions were easier to explain than silence between two people. One afternoon he asked whether I still loved him. Yes, I said. He looked relieved. Then I continued. Love is not the same as trust. His relief disappeared. Can trust return? Some forms of it. And our marriage? Our marriage ended when you decided I could mourn you more safely than I could know you. He cried. So did I. Then I left. Robert died 11 months later. This time I saw his body. This time there was no closed casket. No substituted remains. No hidden document chamber. His death certificate was accurate. His burial was public. I placed no valuable objects in the grave. Charles was buried separately under his own name. Patricia attended. So did Ethan under escort. Thomas did not, his health had declined in custody. At the graveside, Patricia stood beside me without speaking. When the service ended, she said, I spent years hating you for surviving. I know. I taught Ethan to hate you too. Yes. I don't know how to repair that. You cannot repair it alone. Will you help? I will not hide the damage. I will not pay to erase consequences. I will speak to you when speaking is honest. She nodded. It was not reconciliation. It was better than performance. Ashbourne changed after the case. The underground archive chamber was emptied and documented. The tunnels were secured under heritage and law enforcement supervision. The hidden library panel remained. I had the bullet marks repaired but left one small fracture in the stone mantel. A reminder that elegance does not make a structure safe. The mansion was never listed again. Its market value became irrelevant. Newspapers continued using the $160 million figure because large numbers make simple headlines. But the house had never been worth $160 billion. Ethan had inflated the number in early drafts to attract attention from secretive buyers and to signal that the sale included more than real estate. The absurd valuation was a coded invitation. A message to anyone searching for the archive. Asset available. Owner compromised. Private access possible. Claire Alina recognized the fraud instantly because the fraud was hers. But even she did not understand every layer Graham had built around it. He thought the forged papers gave him control. Michael thought the seal gave Verdant Crown control. Robert thought the trusts and traps gave him control. Thomas thought silence gave him control. They were all wrong. Documents can delay theft. Courts can reverse transfers. Police can freeze accounts. But control begins with something less dramatic. Refusing the story that makes betrayal acceptable. Ethan called his theft restitution. Graham called it stabilization. Elena called it justice. Robert called secrecy protection. Patricia called resentment grief. Each word softened what they had chosen. I stopped softening it. A year after the first call from the brokerage, I stood in the Ashbourne Conservatory while snow settled over the east garden. The damaged floor had been restored with clear panels above part of the original tunnel. Visitors could see the old brickwork below. Not enter it. See it. That distinction mattered. The mansion had become the headquarters of a restitution research foundation funded with assets recovered from the Verdant Crown network. The library remained my private room. The adjoining parcels entered permanent conservation protection. No developer could assemble them. No family member could sell them. No hidden trust could alter that without public court approval. Nora became executive director of the foundation. Police cleared her of involvement. She had not taken the seal. She had simply trusted our security chief because I did. That failure belonged to both of us. On the foundation's opening day, Claire Bennett's former brokerage sent flowers. The real Claire Bennett, the woman whose identity Elena had borrowed, had died decades earlier, but the firm wanted no association with the fraud. I declined the flowers. Claire's first warning had saved the house. It had also been bait. Some events can be both. Near sunset, a young researcher approached me in the conservatory. She held a scanned letter recovered from Charles's documents. It was written to Patricia 2 weeks before his death. He admitted selling his shares voluntarily. He admitted planning to monetize the archive. He wrote that Robert had not cheated him. He wrote that if anything happened, Patricia should not allow the boys to turn his mistakes into an inheritance claim. Graham had found the letter years earlier. He hid it. Patricia read it at my dining table that evening. She did not cry. She sat very still. Then she asked for a copy to send Ethan. I gave her one. The original entered the public record. No more private family evidence. No more truth distributed according to loyalty. Before leaving, Patricia stopped beneath the carved stone arch facing the garden. Ashbourne. Robert and I had chosen the name because we liked the sound. Later, it became a code. Then, a prison. Now it was only a place. Do you ever think of selling? She asked. No. Because of Robert? No. Because of the archive? No. Then why? I looked through the glass at the snow-covered maples. Because keeping something is different when no one else gets to decide why. She considered that. Then left. I returned to the library alone. On the desk lay the first forged power of attorney preserved in an evidence sleeve. My false signature still leaned too far forward. The final stroke still curved upward. A gate opening instead of closing. For months I hated that imitation. Then I understood why it failed. Ethan copied the shape of my name. He never understood the force behind it. He thought a signature was authority. It was not. Authority was knowing what belonged to me, what did not, and what I was prepared to defend with evidence rather than secrecy. I placed the forgery in the Foundation archive beside the genuine documents. Not hidden. Not destroyed. Labeled. Dated. Explained. Then I closed the library door. This time the gate closed exactly as it should. The end,